We can begin. Aikoneet, good evening. With great respect and humility, we acknowledge and honor the lands of the Snuneymuxw people. The Snuneymuxw people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connections to the land through ageless traditions, teaching, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. I'd like to also acknowledge that our district is also encompasses the lands of the Snuneymuxw people as well as the Stunimus, and is the also the home of the Métis people by choice. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order to the agenda? Okay. Just also want to remind trustees that if you have any questions or you want to post any opposition or questions, if you can do so in the chat. Okay, so no one's opposed to the motion to approve. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda? Please put it in the chat. Okay, Mark has a motion to approve and Greg Keller has seconded it. All right, we now move on to the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Mark has made a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a seconder? Okay, thank you, Trustee Keller. Greg. We will be the seconder for that. Item number 7 on the agenda is presentations, and we don't have any. So now we're going to move on to senior staff reports. We're going to start with school presentations and Department of Learning Services. I'm going to turn this over to Jackie Pullen, Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening. Thank you so much. And through the chair, it's great to see everybody tonight. I have the wonderful opportunity of introducing Georgia Elementary and their team who will be presenting tonight. So if I could please turn it over to Shauna Coey, the principal of Georgia Elementary, and she will be introducing her team and their presentation. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shauna Coey, and I'm the proud principal of Georgia Avenue Community School. Joining me this evening is Kim Barton, inclusion support teacher, Kelly Ingalls, LIT coordinator, Tamara Mize, EA, and Anna Bedard, vice principal. Also part of our planning team, but could not make this evening, is Amy Collins, life skills EA, and Nikki Zoots, EA. Georgia Avenue Community School is a true community school. We are a K-7 school that serves students in the Harewood area of Nanaimo. We are also grateful to be home to the Elementary District Life Skills Program. Our student population is diverse and vibrant. We have families that are new to Canada, single-parent families, multi-generational families, and many Indigenous families that put their children in our trusted care. This year, we have made teamwork, wellness, and connection our driving force. We have put staff, student, and family wellness at the center of everything we do. We believe that taking care of our mental health needs to be a priority so that we can thrive in the work that we do. We believe that taking care of our students' mental health and wellness also contributes greatly to their successes, both inside and outside of the classroom. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our story this evening, and we welcome you to Georgia Avenue Community School for a visit anytime so that you can see our team and community in action.
Georgia is a dynamic and energetic school that supports many of the district's complex learners. Teamwork is the lens we use when planning for our students. Throughout the school year, we have been able to build a team that supports staff and student well-being through events such as an EA Blitz, monthly team meetings, and fun staff challenges. Student of the school is a phrase often used at Georgia. The intensity of our students requires planning that allows staff members to tag in or out with each other throughout the day. To do this, all of our staff have to be comfortable with some essential strategies. With support from the Inclusion Outreach team, we were able to provide an in-service to our EAs that focused on these essential strategies: visual supports, transitional items, and de-escalation strategies. This in-service was a morning that allowed all of our EAs to learn and share together while their students were supported by members of the school-based team. Everyone from our school psychologist, literacy coordinator, and ISTs were assigned a student to work with and support for an entire morning. This learning allowed our EAs not only to connect with each other as a group, but also gave them the power and confidence to tag out in challenging moments, knowing that their student would still receive the essential supports that they needed. Alongside the EA Blitz, some of our EAs also take part in student-specific monthly check-ins. Each month, the EA team, IST, and admin come together and check in with each other and troubleshoot ways to support our student and also each other. Through these meetings, we have supported each other through some tough moments, brainstormed strategies to support our learner, and developed comprehensive plans that keep our staff safe and our students supported. The teamwork demonstrated from these particular teams this year has been amazing to watch develop over the year. After all of our hard work with our students, sometimes the staff at Georgia needs to forget it all and just have a little bit of fun. Our amazing admin team has organized fun events for our staff to enjoy together, or to be together in a positive and silly way. We did almost lose some of our team members who were extra committed to glow-in-the-dark hide and go seek. Some of us almost needed medical attention to keep up with the winning team for our obstacle course scavenger hunt, and there were many ice packs handed out during the staff versus student basketball games. We're now limbering up and stretching for bowling. These events are much looked forward to and provide a nice sense of balance from the hustle and bustle of Georgia. Teamwork really does make the dream work at Georgia.
Mental health and well-being is at a critical crossroads in our community, in our district, and in our schools. For me, creating a space of comfort, relaxation, and decompression was key. I personally found the generic passing of information, which was to look up on our website for EFAP, overwhelming, underwhelming, and unhelpful. We needed to feel safe and supported, not directed. There was a lacking human connection, and at Georgia, we aimed to change it. In creating our staff room, we provided comfort. It consists of comfortable chairs, sofas, an ottoman, a workstation, coffee station, lunchroom, library, and a wellness area where helpful tools, including recommended apps, pamphlets for EFAP and other support services, a sensory station, and we've just added sounds into our room as well. If you build it, they will come and they will thrive. We've taken this to a next level by offering Connection Corner once a month, where we provide treats, tea, and coffee to staff as they join us before starting their day. The energy is amazing, the feedback is positive, and more importantly, people are coming and connecting again. You will also find from Fairy Lights our rows of gratitude notes from staff to staff members, thanking, recognizing, and celebrating them. We welcome laughter and wellness, fun and fantastic. This is what our space has created. We've continued our get to know your neighbor attitude by having all our staff photos displayed in the front hall in a fun, inviting, and even silly manner. We've created lightness, and with lightness came laughter. Laughter connected us, and gratitude has followed. We've started our inward reflection of well-being, creating a space of connections and team building, because when you're in it, all you're really looking for is that helping hand, that friendly space where you feel supported and where you belong to something greater.
Our school is an amazing place, a longtime hub of the Harrowwood community, and I'm grateful to work alongside our admin team, teaching, and support staff in a place that honors both our students and their families. The community has historically been home to lower income families, but the effects of poverty and trauma have become more prevalent over the last few years, and mental health needs have reached crisis levels. We do what we can with the resources we have to support our students and their families, but sometimes we have to stretch our imaginations on how to best meet the increasing needs to support student and family wellness. We know it is all about relationships and connection. We believe that each child is a student of the school, We understand that many come to school with complex lives and they need the support from a variety of people. Sometimes it looks like having your principal paint your fingernails, playing one-on-one basketball, doing a hallway dance, or going to Tim Hortons for a hot chocolate and a chat. We do what is needed to support our kids. Our CYSFW-led food program feeds about 25 to 30% of our students daily. Students help to prepare, package, and distribute lunches, all while gaining important cooking, social, and leadership skills. Students in the Life Skill program deliver classroom snacks, and this has proven to be a wonderful way to further develop their social skills and build a bridge between the mainstream and Life Skills program. All of the students are so proud of their contributions to our school. Our kids are feeding our kids. We've hosted 2 community dinners so far this year with plans for a third in May. These events were truly amazing and brought our school community together in the most beautiful way. Children, parents, grandparents, aunties, and uncles gathered with other families to share in wonderful meals. For some families, this was the first time they had stepped inside a school in years, and they left knowing their children were in a place filled with love. But the best way to support our students' wellness is to ensure their families are supported. Our staff has banded together to help families navigate housing security, reconnect with their nations, access outside agencies, doctor's appointments, and other social services that can support the needs of their children. Our school needs to support these families more than now to ensure that their children get the physical, emotional, and other basic supports that will ensure they'll be able to learn and thrive. We know that the impact of creating a beautiful, welcoming space in the staff room, what it has done for our staff morale and wellness. Our goal is to make the outside of Georgia as welcoming as the inside. We hope to do away with the crumbling concrete and create a welcoming outdoor learning and gathering space that honors the diversity of our families, our community, and our land, allowing community families to build relationships and connections in a space that they deserve.
Sorry, Anna, you're just muted.
Yeah, sorry. As you have heard from our staff, the emphasis that Georgia Avenue places on mental health and overall well-being is at the forefront of day-to-day decisions. We take pride in creating an atmosphere that embodies compassion, empathy, and fun. In addition to hearing from us, we wanted to provide you with the voice from our community as a whole, from staff, students, and family members about the ways in which that Georgia Avenue supports mental health. By creating meaningful connections and lifelong relationships, by providing food and coffee, fuel for the soul, by actively including all members of our community, parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, caregivers, staff, and children, by creating a community that celebrates equality and diversity, by creating an environment that is loving, and the people inside and outside of the walls are always smiling and listening, by collaborating in a way where all members of the team are equal, by creating a community where each member and individual feels as though they're treated as family, by celebrating all the beautiful families within our school community, and by spending rich and meaningful time with our friends. And finally, being with our students day in and day out is what supports our overall mental health. So thank you on behalf of the Georgia Avenue school community for hearing our story and our pride in creating a rich environment that truly cares about the well-being of all its members, children, parents, grandparents, and caregivers alike. And this concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much. It's my understanding that we'll have some questions in regards to this presentation. Do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any. Oh, yes, we do. Trustee Morvay has a question.
Hi, thank you. This is fantastic. I really enjoyed seeing all the wonderful things you're doing there, and the staff wellness. That is huge, as we know, coming out of the pandemic. Our kids are feeling it, but also.
Excuse me, Chantal, can you speak a little louder?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think my headphones are getting a little tired after all these 3 years of COVID speaking into them, but thank you so much for this presentation. It's like you've hit all the bases of like helping staff and everything. That is hugely key. Just wonderful ideas in the staff room and stuff. Like that is super cool. I wish I had that here in my home. The wonderful things you guys are doing. I just have like a question about the life skills program. I haven't yet like gotten out there or anything like that. So I was hoping somebody could explain a little bit more what that is comprised of.
Yeah, I can speak to that. And Trustee Morvay, you're always welcome to come by and check out the program as well. So our elementary district life skills program is also on site. So we kind of, it's down a hallway. So we work very, very hard to create interaction and involvement, kind of a mixture between both worlds, right? Having our life skills students, they have various classes that they attend, whether it's music class, gym class, art class, and we've worked really hard to create that connection. And one of the things that our staff room has done as well has actually intertwined our staffs for the first time, really intertwine them. All the life skills EAs actually take their breaks down in our staff room now, and which is incredible for wellness and connection, brainstorming ideas, having a chance to share. And so it is, the life skills program essentially is 11 to 12 students depending, and they're all working direct one-to-one with an EA, and there is a teacher that oversees that, and then also myself that I oversee it as well.
Follow-up question, if I may, Chair. Fantastic, thank you. You said that the life skills students were able to bring snacks to the classrooms. I'm wondering, do other students kind of help out with that as well? Does that become like a sort of a team thing with other students, or is it just them, or do they bake the food? I think I heard something about they're helping make the food as well too.
Tamara, do you want to answer that one?
So generally we have skills deliver on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, the snack program. It is set up and they come down and collect it, and then they take it to each classroom and they go around, and then they go in and would greet the teacher and put it in the refrigerators that are provided for each classroom. And then we have other students that will also come in and prep the snacks. So they learn how to cut veggies, put out apples and muffins and yogurts. And then we also have a lunch program that they go around and help prepare. So we have 3 hot lunches, sorry, and then 2 days of sandwiches. So it's quite an inclusive and interactive, and the kids really seem to enjoy it, and even like to take recipe home and then be able to build that within their family as well. So again, it just doesn't just reach within our own school community, it's taking it outside of the school back into their homes and learning how to make healthy and good choices. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. It's another aspect that we didn't hear, and that's really cool too. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Brozovic has a question.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I have to be I almost wasn't going to ask you a question because I actually know one of the families that are connected to your life skills program, and I don't want to slip and reveal anything. So just kick me virtually if you need to. Just basically, I guess what I want to know, what I've always kind of wondered is what is the range of needs or disabilities, or however we want to put it. How does the child get referred to life skills basically versus having an IEP and being in a classroom?
I can answer that, trustee. So it is actually Kirsten Funky Robinson, Carrie Steele, and a number of other people that oversee it because they have the greater picture of what's happening across the district. So that doesn't happen on site for us at all. So it's students from across the district that get referred to the program, or whether they're referred by a school or their complex needs are brought up. And I see Kirsten and Carrie coming on. So anyone want to take this one for me?
I'm happy to speak to it a little bit. Yeah. So because this particular option for students, and depending on needs and finding the best match in terms of their needs and a school setting, because these students come from all over our district, the process for determining whether or not it's the right fit, it comes from meeting with school staff and families, and really just a very fulsome discussion around needs and what parents are looking for and all of those pieces to make that determination. Typically,
yeah, sorry. No.
Sorry, Tanya, Trustee Brozovic. Typically, it would have a lot to do too with considering things like medical fragility and some of those components that might really benefit from having that very intensive and significant support from an educational assistant and a highly specialized setting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can tell you that I know for sure, just talking to my friend, it's been a godsend for them, and they just want you all. I have permission to tell you, just thank you. You're doing amazing work. It's a wonderful program, and they were nervous. They weren't sure it was that you guys were going to be able to meet their family's needs, and it's amazing what's happening. I can't say anything more without giving too much away. I will also add, and I'm imagining each of the students. This is very much an IEP based. Like learning, because the children will be on different. My recollection when I saw it at Rutherford before Rutherford closed was the children were different ages and they had different challenges or disabilities, so they were in different places in their learning. There would be 2 7-year-olds who would be in completely different places in their what they were capable, where they were learning wise. Am I accurate? Is that accurate? Yeah. Thank you.
Very much so. Yeah, there's quite a broad range of needs. And I think, yeah, in terms of ages too, we have from grade 1 to grade 7. Is that accurate, Shauna? Just trying to think through our list there. Yeah, grade 1 to grade 7. So it's you can imagine some of the developmental differences even by age alone, and then developmental complexities in addition. Yeah, it's quite a diverse crew and an awesome crew.
Well, I am definitely going to take you up on that offer, and I am going to come for a visit soon. I'm going to connect with the trustee for Georgia, and I'm really looking forward to coming and seeing it. So thank you.
Thanks. I just we have like these are great questions and everything. I just want to remind trustees that we do have a time frame here, and we have a long agenda. There potentially could be a lot of discussion in other areas, and just ask me for a follow-up question. I'm just trying to keep mindful of the time. All right. Mark, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be mindful of the time. Everyone, Tamara, Shauna, Kimberly, Anna, thank you so much. Fantastic. Question regarding mentioning youth in care. When we're talking youth in care, are we talking about children that are in foster care or have diverse family dynamics? What are we talking about with youth in care?
I'm happy to speak to that a little bit as well, because I do have a presentation for you coming up that's going to go through in quite a bit of detail about the different types of custody orders and care agreements. So it probably a little bit later in our agenda this evening through the chair.
Oh, we can wait then.
Yeah.
Kirsten, we
I
can
think that
wait
might
then.
be a good idea.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Tom, you have a question.
Oh, my camera wasn't set up right. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you again. Unlike my other fellow trustees, I had the pleasure of being at Georgia 2 weeks ago for a fantastic spring concert. seeing all those kids work together, and the kind of the emphasis on the group music together was really very, I thought, fit well with the mental health aspect. It was a great show. I wanted to ask a little bit about something that I've always admired about Georgia and its location and how we are taking advantage of that. When I was over at Barsby, it was just so perfectly close to its feeder school. You're just down the block, and now at the Georgia Walkway. Are you able to use that to the advantage to kind of get kids ready for high school? Is there integration as kids get into grade 6s and 7s? Are they over at the site? I'm thinking about the community garden, maybe what the impact of the turf fields might have. It's right there. It's a fantastic little community connection you have with your high school. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so we have many of our groups, grade 6, 7, and even younger, also utilize that space. We have, especially our younger ages, head on to Barsby property often to use the park as a walking field trip, just a quick hour trip. We also have our grade 6, 7s that head on site quite often to either use the field like you noted, and our grade 7s will head there for some tours in the next few weeks, I believe it is. You know, beyond going into the school, not as much. However, we do actually have some Barsby students that come here to do a fair amount of stuff here within, whether it's reading. We have a group that comes with Angela and EA, who used to work here. They come every Thursday for cooking. So definitely a great connection between the schools, as well as a connection with Learning Alt, the Barsby site.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Shauna. Thank you for that. I'm just wondering, as we work our way into outdoor education as a priority, is that your best site? Like, I know maybe walking the kids up to the dam might be a little much for little ones, but are we able to use it for outdoor education? That kind of the creek and the community garden?
Yeah, so the creek, yes. The community garden isn't as used as much because we do have our own garden in our center courtyard.
Oh, cool.
And so many of the classes have their own actual garden plot. Actually, I would say that Colliery Dam and the trails up there are most actively used for our outdoor education. I would say, I don't know, 6, 7 classes go per week right now in the nicer weather, and just kind of head off site, whether it's for full mornings in the older grades or just for a brief, just an hour and a half visit. And they use the dam area, but also kind of just time in the trees and create an outdoor space there for their learning.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for, optimizing our neighborhood and introducing our kids to the places they'll go play after school too. So yeah, great work, team. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add, Leanna Pellegrin put a comment in the chat. She said, wow, incredible work and sense of community. Love the staff wellness. Thank you. Wonderful job. Yeah, are there any more questions from trustees? Okay, yeah, I would just like to thank you as well, and I think all the other trustees have made really good questions and comments. I love the community dinners, bringing community together, because I think a school really needs to behave like a community in itself, and then the vibe is so much stronger and positive. And staff wellness, that's so huge, and that's great leadership. So thank you very much.
Sorry, just through the chair, if I'd just like to extend a huge thank you from us to the school for coming in and presenting. So thank you to the Georgia Ave team. A beautiful presentation tonight. Love being able to come to your school when I can, to have a chance to visit the community. So thank you so much, and the evening's yours now.
Thanks, Jackie. All right, so it's either Jackie or Dawn are going to introduce the next. I guess it'll be Dawn.
Thank you. And through the chair, yes, extend my appreciations for the Georgia team. That was a lovely presentation, so thank you for that. And it's my great honor to introduce Laura Roberts, principal at Cedar Community Secondary School, who's going to introduce her team for their presentation. So I'll turn it over to Laura.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm very excited and very honored to introduce our fabulous Cedar team. The last several years, our team has focused on wellness and mental health in our school for students and staff. And really, the premise of our work in the last few years has revolved around normalizing the conversation of mental health with our students. It's a difficult conversation. It's comes with lots of heavy stuff, and in the past, talking about mental health, as we all know, has had some stigmas attached to it, and our students are still getting out of that old thinking. So one of the things we do is we build relationships, and yeah, we make these conversations part of our general learning and our day, away from the old traditional, well, when you have a problem, you go walk down to the counselor and talk about it. Now we have more connections around the building to have these conversations more naturally with our youth. So I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Beerling and Jace Ruxall, who are our learning leaders at Cedar. And you see our fabulous vice principal in the background, Jim Tasco, who's joined our team as well. And I will turn it over to all of these guys to share with you. Thank you.
I'm Jace. Nice to meet you all. Nice to see you, Naomi. Naomi was my teacher, so that's pretty cool to see this come full circle. I love it.
Yeah.
Should
we share our screen?
So
here?
we will share our screen and give us one moment here. Yeah, there we go.
Not that one. There we go.
Perfect. Can everyone still hear us okay? Great. Okay. Awesome. Exquale, we are honored to be here on behalf of our school, Cedar Community Secondary.
Okay, so some of you may remember our students sharing the success of our first mental health conference at last year's board presentation. And so after that conference in the fall, our staff had some opportunities to do some Pro-D connected to well-being, including Kim Barthel, Relationships Matter, and Ivan Coyote, Everyone Deserves a Safe Place. And building on that momentum, we decided to scan our school community this September to see how everyone was doing. And what we noticed was both student and staff surveys highlighted the importance of strategies to support positive mental health. Last year, more than 50% of students said they feel anxious most of the time and reported struggling to support their friends with their difficulties. Both students and staff at times reported feeling disconnected post-COVID and wanted to find ways to continue to build community and connection. In the classroom, our teachers are noticing reduced resilience and engagement compared to pre-COVID. And while the majority of our students want to be in our building every day, some of them are still continuing to struggle to engage in their learning opportunities. On the positive side, we noted that our junior students especially are very willing to share their personal experiences around mental health and want to connect with one another as well as to the adults in the building. And students are reporting that they feel the adults in the building care about them.
In addition to the learning surveys, we gathered some data. In our Careers at 9 class, we watched the film Inside Out and then reflected on who we are as a person, the importance of what makes us, us, and discussing how crucial all emotions are by individually creating 5 or more islands. On the grade 9 informal learning update, most students said they were the proudest of this assignment. This is what Ashley and I noticed when looking at all of the different personality islands. Almost every student had an island dedicated to family or chosen family. There were many islands dedicated to sadness, anxiety, and depression. Every island was unique and in their own artistic style that represented our students. And almost every student had some type of physical activity or outdoor activity that they were passionate about.
So based on this information in planning for this school year, we used the NLPS social emotional learning goals as a guide. And in collaboration with our staff, we set a new school goal to promote health and mental wellness to students and staff through embedded practices that will provide a safe, caring, and healthy environment to learn and grow. So in addition to this goal, one of the guiding frameworks that we're using in our practice is the Circle of Courage. So this is a unique model of positive youth development. It integrates the cultural wisdom of Indigenous peoples, the practice of professionals working with troubled youth,
and findings of modern child development research. And the 4 directions of the Circle of Courage portray the universal human needs for belonging, mastery, independence, and generosity. So in embedding SEL and mental health supports in our practice at Cedar this year, we're trying to focus our work in these 4 areas of holistic wellness. One of the first actions taken this year was facilitating our 2nd annual mental health conference, and we have a video here documenting the event.
Jason, Ashley, it sounds like the people can't hear the sound.
Ashley, if you want to stop sharing, and then when you go to share again, it gives you the option to share with computer audio. If you do that, and then just go to the slide and start the video again, it should work for you.
Okay, let me see here.
Now if we go here.
Stop sharing. Sorry, technical difficulty. Stop sharing and then
Yep,
share.
and then when you go share, it'll say share with computer audio.
Oh yeah, there we go. Sorry about that.
There you go. And then yeah, when you go back, just go to your slide with the video and it should play.
Thanks, guys.
Look at these learning
Look at that.
opportunities.
Okay.
Love that.
Newbie presenter. I'll go back to the. Should I go to the very beginning?
Yeah, perfect.
Let us know.
Yay.
Well, conference idea was started with there was a death in our school, and we have seen a lot of the negative effects of mental health. And one of the seniors last year was really interested in creating awareness and giving back to the school before she left. So she came to me with the idea and the student council, and we talked to all the teachers, and we were able to get the everybody on board, and I'm so glad it worked out. And it's exciting to see it happen this year again. It's like created a movement that's continuing, and they get to learn about different topics such as anxiety management, healthy living, how to deal with friends who might be having mental health, and it's really important. Some of them are pretty neat, some of them are just fun, and so that it's a nice balance for the students.
A job you like, friends, food, healthy food, a good family life, having enough sleep, exercise, relationships with your friends. Having good friendships is a really big part of health.
It is about flowers and how my body needs nutrients, and my feelings about my family and love and spreading kindness, and my mind that helps me when I have anxiety is like skating and playing board games.
A gym? Like a gym to work out, like a public gym? What is it about that might help you with mental health? Is it maybe, does exercise help with you feel better? Yeah.
We got it.
We're back on. Okay. Gonna click through.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so it didn't say in the video there, but we also invited some of us students from our feeder schools to come. So it wasn't just our junior students in grade 8 and 9, but we also had students from our neighboring schools come to join us for that day. It was an amazing event. And since that time, we've taken a few further steps. Here's what we've been up to.
So one of the ways we've embedded holistic supports is through our professional development opportunities this year. Ashley and I are both the co-chairs of our Pro-D committee. Our first focus for Pro-D is modeling exactly what a trauma-informed and inclusive classroom looks like. Each school-based Pro-D aligned with the key principles of trauma-informed practice, such as safety and predictability, structure, clear goals, predictable format, and providing materials. Connection, SEL check-ins, community building, having a soft start with gentle music, time to connect with colleagues, and enjoying something to eat. Choice and voice. We took a survey of all staff to hear what they wanted their professional development to look like, and then we give them a choice of which workshops or activities they'd like to participate in. Collaboration and peer support. Each Pro-D we've built in time to collaborate, debrief, and consolidate our learning. Strengths-based. Asking staff members who are masters at their craft to share with all of the staff. We also focused on sharing our student strengths and successes. In our most recent Pro-D in February, Joe Cornthwaite from the NDTA came to CCSS and ran a session on trauma-informed practice. Based on staff feedback from this Pro-D, Ashley and I are putting together resources and lessons around trauma-informed practice. And in the upcoming Pro-D in May, we are focusing on how to use the Circle of Courage as a guide to collaborate and implement further supports for next year. So, how are we embedding wellness in our practices at Cedar? In February, our school hosted our first Mastery Night, inviting families to come and share in their students' learning. This was an amazing evening, and it was wonderful to see our students so proud of their learning. We'll be hosting our second Mastery Night this month, Wednesday, May 17th, and we're really looking forward to it. In the area of independence, as a whole school, we've been working to share strategies and supports that help students become more independent in their learning and self-regulation. The grade 9 team has worked together on specific strategies for this cohort, and we're exploring inclusion models for next year that best fit the needs of our diverse Cedar community. Multiple teachers are doing lessons about growth mindset, resilience, self-reflection, and time management with their various classes. Additionally, a new dance class started this year and has been a wonderful outlet for all students. In the area of independence and generosity, the Volunteer Club was an initiative started by Ava Shaw, who you saw in our video earlier. These students saw a need for more volunteers in the community. These are some of the activities and organizations the Volunteer Club has been involved with. Christmas food drive, going to the Loaves and Fishes and doing bottle sorting, the Cedar Elementary Fall Fair, our own Christmas craft market here, and many more. With Belonging at Cedar, we've made efforts, especially post-COVID, to bring students together in person. Activities such as gym riots, school dances, multi-grade field trips, team sports, clubs, as well as in PLC. In the classroom, many teachers are providing time each week for students to connect, from SEL check-ins, time to play a board game, or downtime to chat with a friend. All of these activities have given the students opportunity for togetherness.
So along that line, I had the chance to teach a grade 8 elective this semester, and I wanted to give them some choice in what they learned about for the 6 weeks that we spend together. And after providing several options that I thought was exciting, they were thrilled to choose personal wellness as their option for our 6 weeks together. So we're just wrapping up this week, and we've centered it on the 4 areas of the Circle of Courage. And the students have been working on wellness portfolios, and every day we learn about and practice strategies for positive physical mental health, and it has been amazing. For our staff to celebrate all parts of the Circle of Courage, we have been passing along the Cedar Staff Award of Excellence. You can see its beauty there right in the center. So colleagues recognize one another for excelling in one or more of the quadrants of the Circle of Courage. We chose a cedar wreath to represent the award. And after the recipient gets the award, they add something that is personal or important to them before passing it along to the next recipient at the next staff meeting. It's been a fun way to celebrate.
Yeah, it's great.
So in reflecting on this year's efforts and planning for next year, we recently surveyed our grade 8 and 9 students, and here's what we found out.
So what we heard from them was that 50% of grade 8 students feel safe all the time at school. This is positive to see because coming into a new environment that is already established can be very challenging. 90% of grade 8 students feel like some or all of their teachers care about their mental health, and 84% of grade 9 students feel the same. Overall, grade 8 and 9 students said they wanted to learn more about the topic of sleep and how to get enough of it. They're also interested in strategies for increased independence, such as time management, as well as continued opportunities to connect as a school community. We felt that this survey gave us great insight into what our learners need and how we can continue to work towards our goal of promoting health and mental wellness to students next year. As we went through the results, we noticed that the mental health and sexual health topics that were taught by classroom teachers were what students remembered learning about and understood the most.
We also surveyed our staff recently to find out how things have been going for them. So since our recent Pro D Days, teachers say 100% of them say that they're making renewed efforts to encourage belonging and build positive relationships and recognize student strengths in their classrooms. 54% said that after our February session, they've included intentional mental health awareness in their lessons. 82% are interested in further Pro D and resources to incorporate mental health and wellness in their practice. And the areas of focus that they're hoping for are identifying signs of trauma, calm down strategies, and teaching empathy and listening skills. So now that we have some new data to guide our practice, we are planning some next steps for our journey into next year. Our focus areas are going to be looking at maybe some changes to our support model in order to better meet student needs. We're going to create further opportunities for connection and belonging, especially for our September startup. And we're hoping to deepen our learning around trauma-informed practice as a school. Now that we know that there's a strong connection between the student-staff relationships and what students remember in their learning, we're hoping to use that as we move forward into our learning next year. We're going to use Ensoling Our Schools by Jennifer Katz as a guide next year, and we're hoping that some of our teachers will take on some of her lessons in their classrooms. Another idea we have as learning leaders is to expand the mental health conference, not just to our junior students and feeder schools, but provide opportunities for our senior students as well. Maybe in the format of regular seminars within the classroom. We'll see what that looks like, but we just want to make sure that junior and senior students have a chance to engage in these discussions, and it's at the center of what we do. And now after seeing Georgia Avenue's presentation, we have some more ideas there too. Mm-hmm. We will have some more land-based opportunities. We have a garden going in as well. And yeah, connection and lightness that they mentioned, I think that's what we'd like to see here at our school.
And I think too, when we saw the survey and what the students answered was that they really were learning positively from their classroom teachers. So hopefully just embedding more of the mental health awareness into the classroom every day. So we've made some great progress this year, and our hope is that with continued efforts in next year's survey, we'll see a big increase in the number of Cedar students saying they feel safe, that they belong, and that they're experiencing positive physical and mental health. Sepka, thank you so much for your time this evening and in listening to our presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful. I really appreciated that. I have Leanne Lee would like to make a comment.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you, honestly, for providing your students with a place where they, where you see them, where you believe in them, where you show them they're safe to grow and thrive. These actions will absolutely allow students the opportunity for deeper learning because they feel a sense of belonging within their school. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments? Oh, Trustee Morvay says, absolutely wonderful. Thank you for all your amazing work. Thanks, Chantal. Any other comments or questions? Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Mental health, you know, it seems to be the one topic that's at the top of the list when it comes to our needs in our schools. And I love how you used Martin's Broken Leg Circle of Courage, but you also blended it with a bit of Western philosophy as well. And I think that's a really beautiful balance. I love the staff award too, because we have to remember that our staff needs to feel that love and appreciation and support and sense of teamwork, because if we don't have a happy staff, the school's not happy then, right? So
Yes,
thank you.
Positive celebration.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Jason, Ashley, and Laura. Dawn, I think do I turn it over to you again?
Yes, you do. Thank you. And through the chair,
Thank
I will
you.
also extend my appreciation to Team Cedar. Thank you so much for sharing. It is so nice to see all of those practices embedded in some good data from the students, getting some input, and you have a great path forward as well. So thank you for sharing with us tonight, and enjoy the rest
Dawn?
of this sunny evening. Oh,
Yeah, I
other
was just going to
questions?
say there's a couple more comments.
Okay, yeah, please read the comments for everybody, yeah.
Sorry, they just popped up. So Tanya said, well said, Leanne, you are doing wonderful work in Cedar. Mark Robinson, love the holistic supports. And Leanna says, beautiful work. Love seeing the data of both groups of students and staff. Very inspiring. Keep up the good work. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, Learning Services has 2 additional reports under agenda item 8.1 in our Learning Services presentations. We have Kirsten Funky Robinson, who's going to present on Children in Care framework, and then Director Funky Robinson and Director Carrie Steele are also going to present on the crisis response continuum. And I'm going to ask that they present those 2 presentations back to back. You'll notice why if you look and see that Kirsten has curtains of a hotel room. She's over in Vancouver for a workshop, and it's just on a single screen. So Carrie is here in the office, and we'll be sharing slides for Kirsten's presentation on children in care. And if trustees have questions, feel free to pop them into the comment section. Kirsten and Carrie will be able to respond after they've completed both presentations. So I'll ask Directors of Instruction, Funky Robinson and Steele, to join us for the next presentations.
Thank you. I'm just going to, as you mentioned, I am on one screen, so I will do my best to navigate technology here. Okay, I need to. My apologies. Please bear with me as I. There we go. Have you got my
we're perfect.
Slides now?
Good to go, Kirsten. Yep.
Super. Thank you. Yes, as timing would have it, as Assistant Superintendent Velko mentioned, I'm at the Mental Health in Schools Conference in Vancouver, and I have to admit, hearing our schools sharing their presentations tonight, my bucket is absolutely overflowing. Hearing about some of the examples and tying it to so much of what I've been hearing over the last 2 days. So I'm excited to share this next piece with you. So my intention this evening is to share with you some of the details of our strategy to support some of our district's most vulnerable students and to work to improve the life chances of those students. Namely, those are our children and youth in care. So as aligned with our board plan and the goal for safe, caring and healthy learning and working environment, this particular objective that I'm presenting to you about this evening is increasing awareness and capacity in supporting children and youth in care. And you are probably well aware that children and youth in care represent an especially vulnerable population within our schools. As such, they require focused and intentional efforts to provide them with equitable educational experiences. So who are our children and youth in care? And hopefully this will help to address Trustee Robinson's question that came up a little bit earlier. So children and youth in care are those who have come into the custody, care, or guardianship of a director designated under the Child, Family, Community Services Act. And so in our context in NLPS, this includes involvement with the Ministry of Children and Family Development or an Indigenous Child and Family Service delegated agency, namely Kwamut Laylam. So children and youth in care can come from any cultural or socioeconomic background. They come into care for a variety of different reasons. They have different legal statuses depending on that custody or care arrangement. While custody orders are put in place due to safety concerns, agreements come into place to give children and youth needed supports for a variety of reasons. As of February 2021, 67.2% of children and youth in care in the province of BC were Indigenous. Children and youth in care may have medical or developmental issues that can affect their ability to learn. In addition, they may be experiencing emotional difficulties due to stressful events in their lives, such as family breakdown, domestic violence, trauma, moving on or off reserve or out of other home communities, separation from siblings, the intergenerational legacy of colonial practices that we're all becoming well familiar with, residential schools, Indian hospitals, the 60s scoop, and the current overrepresentation of Indigenous children and youth in care. All of these events and transitions can have significant impacts on children and youth, and additionally on their ability to learn and on their eventual educational outcomes. The legal status of a child or youth in care and the legal rights of parents differ according to the type of custody order or care agreement in place. As an example, special needs agreements and voluntary care agreements allow for parents to retain control of the child's personal information and decision-making about the child's health care, but day-to-day care of the child rests with a caregiver. In contrast, custody orders give decision-making about healthcare and consent to directors who delegate child welfare workers to carry this out. Day-to-day care rests with caregivers, and an example of that would be familiar to you would be foster parents. We have three overall guiding documents that we use in the province of BC. And because in addition to family and community involvement, there are two significant means of support for children and youth in care, which is of course the education system and the child welfare system. So reports from the Representative for Children and Youth recommend that education and MCFD focus on further improving the tracking and connection with at-risk children and youth in order to improve the percentage of children and youth in care who hold a high school graduation credential at age 19. Strong benefits are acquired by children and youth in care when those responsible for their care operate as a team and communicate about the child or youth's strengths, talents, needs, and educational progress. And of course, this is no surprise, it makes intuitive sense. This communication helps direct the educational program toward the development of a child or youth's personality, talents, mental and physical abilities, and helping them to reach their fullest potential. Because of this, appropriate information sharing among all persons involved is really essential, particularly in transition planning, such as prior to transfer or exit of schools, ongoing collaboration in individual student programming, and all of these pieces are critically important to guide and support students. So as I mentioned, and as you can see on your screen, there are three key provincial guiding documents that we use in planning how we wrap around children and youth in care to support them in their educational experiences. The first on the left, which may be familiar to you, is a How Are We Doing report, which is published by the BC Ministry of Education and Childcare. The last one that's publicly published is 2018, and this describes the educational outcomes for children and youth in care according to three key areas, which is intellectual development, human and social development, and career development. And this particular report, which is available publicly online, is a provincial summary report of data for children and youth in care. And it includes a variety of data sources that you may be familiar with, including student learning survey data, foundation skills assessment data, and graduation rates. Overall, these results reveal disparities for children and youth in care in comparison to their non-care peers. In addition, intersectionality is evident for children and youth in care who also have special education designations and those who are Indigenous. If you look to the right of your screen, the Sharing Information Guide is a guide that came out in 2020 and was developed together with the Ministries of Education and Childcare and Children and Family Development. And this guide provides very specific details to staff from each ministry about what types of information can be shared with which parties and under which circumstances. So you can imagine how critically important that is as well to some of the operations of a school system. And the third one, the one that's in the middle, is probably the most key document that underpins our strategy in terms of how we support children and youth in care in schools. And this joint educational planning and support for children and youth in care, or the cross-ministry guidelines as they're known, they're published every 3 years. They're revised and updated. So the original was published, I believe, in 2008. The most recent version came out in 2021. And these guidelines include a number of very specific templates and collections of tips, real direct strategies for staff in various roles in order for them to maximize their efforts in supporting educational planning for children and youth in care. So I'm sure probably at the top of your minds is a wonder about our current context and the context of our school district. So I'm going to share with you 3 sort of pieces of data to give you a bit of an understanding of what we see here in NLPS in terms of children and youth in care. The first is that here in Nanaimo Ladysmith, we've seen a steady decline in the number of children and youth in care in our district. And that's gone on for approximately the past 12 years, which is similar to a provincial trend overall. The second, in terms of the percentage of children and youth in care in NLPS, and the way that the Ministry of Education tracks this, particularly in terms of their data, is to consider children and youth in care currently, but also who have ever historically been in care. And you can probably imagine that the importance of that is because we know that ever having been in care is potentially a risk factor for students that we need to be mindful of. And so currently within our district, approximately 3% of our student population have had the experience of being in care at some point in their lives. And the third piece of data is that we are seeing a steady increase in completion rates for children and youth in care. And so this is a very interesting and positive piece of data for our district, because we see a steady increase over approximately the past 3 to 4 years in both 5- and 6-year completion rates. And what we see is that our NLPS stats are actually considerably above the provincial average. We've seen a leap in the last year or 2 years in terms of those completion rates. So the trend is absolutely going in the direction that we want to see. In terms of our specific strategies in our schools and things that our staff are engaged in, we have a strategy with 3 parts, which is really aimed at building staff awareness and capacity. In consideration of the interministerial guidelines, we have this 3-part approach, and although these efforts have been underway for the last few years, as with all things coming from the pandemic, we have found that a reinvigoration of these strategies has really been necessary as we refocus, and particularly in light of decline in mental health that we know we've seen provincially and even in a broader context. So the first component of our local strategy is around information sharing. And again, these 3 components are aligned with those cross-ministerial guidelines that I referenced earlier. So the names of students currently in care, or those who have left care, are provided to NLPS staff by MCFD and Kwamut-Lalem staff approximately bi-monthly. We have scheduled meetings, although they do occur more frequently if needed. These details are updated centrally in a local database that is accessible to principals and vice principals through our intranet. And in addition, the status of children currently in care is entered into MyEd, along with who has custody and the type of care or custody order. And this is a new capacity that we have in MyEd, so it's something that we're just beginning to see now, but it's a great addition to our data tracking. As I mentioned, regular meetings occur with NLPS staff and the designated contacts with MCFD and Kwamut-Lalem. Those typically involve myself and others as relevant, and in the case of KL, myself and Director Bartlett meet together typically with KL staff to engage in joint planning and information sharing. And these meetings typically include problem solving for individual children and families as needed, resolution of logistical challenges, monitoring of student progress, really anything that emerges that we deem is addressed best through a collaborative effort. The second component of our strategy overall is around transition planning. So upon receiving updated care status of students, schools are prompted to verify that all children in care, either currently or historically, are assigned a mentor. And this can be any staff member with a connection to the student. It is typically a counselor or child, youth and family support worker, but other staff members with key relationships with students can also serve as mentors. And this is part of a newly refreshed strategy. As I mentioned, prior to my arrival into my current role, this was a strategy that had already been initiated, but it's being reinvigorated now with a healthy dose of fresh energy and some new strategies. So as a part of the mentorship strategy on a quarterly basis, which are aligned with key times of transition, such as the beginning and end of the year and prior to holiday periods throughout the school year, because we know that these key transition times can be particularly stressful for children and youth in care. Mentors are provided with a collection of resources that can be shared with their mentees as appropriate. This prompts an individual check-in that includes goal setting and sharing of resources as needed. And particularly important examples of transition times would include things like entrance into secondary school or transition to adulthood and a potential transition to post-secondary educational experiences. The third component of our strategy is collaboration and planning, and here involving all parties with responsibility for the care and custody of children in care is critical to ensuring consistent and continuous educational support. Even though the adults on a student's care team may fluctuate, the key goal here is that students experience these transitions as seamlessly as possible. At times of reporting on student learning progress, reports are shared with the student's care team, and members of the team are invited to any needed meetings to share and plan. Particularly in the event that children in care require individualized educational supportive planning, their care teams are invited to participate and are kept informed of decisions or plans made. I'd like to speak to you a little bit about mentorship in particular, and particularly because a mentorship has been identified broadly as an especially effective strategy for children and youth in care. And so you may be familiar with the BC Federation of Youth in Care Networks. This is an organization in our province that is aimed at elevating the voices of children and youth in care who are in care currently, as well as those who've been in care historically. As aligned with research evidence, this organization promotes mentoring as a particularly powerful support for children and youth in care. And they promote the fact that a small amount of time or small investment really of time in the life of a young person in care can have an enduring impact. And of course, we know that that really fits with the research around how critical it is for children and youth to be able to identify key caring adults in their lives. Through the lens of youth who've experienced being in care themselves, the Federation of BC Youth in Care Networks offer a number of resources that are accessible directly to youth as well as to the adults who support them. Raising the profile of resources such as this one is valuable to helping NLPS mentors provide essential relationship and a sense of belonging to children and youth in care. And currently, we have a presentation from the BC Federation of Youth in Care Networks, which is being arranged for this spring. They have presented within our district historically. I think the last presentation was before the pandemic, so it's time to get them in again and to be able to address mentors directly. And part of the reason that I wanted to speak specifically about this resource in the Federation of BC Youth in Care Network is that to kick off our reinvigorated mentorship strategy for children and youth in care in NLPS, our district will be promoting BC Child and Youth in Care Week. And you can see on your screen there that that is coming up from May 29th to June 4th. We're working with the communications department currently to provide a digital platform for NLPS staff's contributions to the campaign of this organization around this particular week. And so they're promoting the use of the STEM statement, reasons why kids in care are awesome. And so what we're hoping to do with this campaign is to spread the sharing of these reasons across all 7 days of the week, recognizing children and youth in care in BC. So in NLPS, this is a great opportunity for us to raise awareness of this important campaign, and additionally to build a sense of purpose and excitement for our children and youth in care and within our staff community who support them. So please watch for our sharing of this campaign. It's coming to social media platform near you. And that concludes what I've got for you this evening about our children and youth in care framework.
Thank you very much. That was very detailed. Do we have any questions? No questions? I have one. Of course, I always do. My question is around, we talk about what's going on in the schools in terms of transitioning and everything. So I know the CYC worker is critical in helping support students that are in care. There's lots of appointments and sort of family liaison things happening and etc. I was wanting to know, and maybe Dawn might be able to answer this, is what is the ratio? What do we have for a ratio for CYC workers to students? And let's break it elementary and then secondary.
You know what? I don't have the ratios necessarily for our CYCs, and I'm not sure whether Director Funky Robinson knows for sure, but Lynn Brown, our Director of Mental Health, kind of covers off our staffing for our community school youth or family support workers. And it's based on community need, but it's also based on the ability of the school teams to meet the needs of their families. So sometimes there's at secondary, we'll have one CYFSW worker, or we might have two at a school. Elementary schools, often they will share several schools. But it's, as Kirsten said, it's working in partnership with all kinds of agencies to support those vulnerable youth.
I just have a follow-up question on that is, do you feel that this is an area that maybe we need to look at increasing supports? We talk about mental health and transitioning, and I just have, from my experience, know how valuable CYC workers are. So is this an area that we maybe can grow?
I'd say the mental health umbrella of needs coming out of the pandemic is something the whole system is paying attention to. So I wouldn't be able to comment on specific areas where we should be adding support, but I know both through the school presentations, but also in learning services when we're talking about needs and supporting families, the mental health and wellness of the system, which goes for our adults working in the system, is a topic for everybody. And I think, yeah, we'll probably be coming back to trustees saying, here's where we're paying attention and here's where the shifting needs are in the system for sure, in the coming years for sure.
Tom has a question.
Hi, thank you, Chair, and through you to Ms. Funky Robinson. Thank you for the presentation. I was just simply wondering if you were able, you talked about the increasing completion rates in our district. Did you see any kind of statistical change when the children in care were able to attend post-secondary without tuition? I'm just wondering if that resulted in any, like, I understand that we're always working on supporting their today, but to me that kind of also opens up their tomorrow, and I'm wondering if that showed up in the data. We've had that locally for what, not even a decade now, a little bit less. I know VIU was early, but it's spreading across the province now. So I'm wondering if you're seeing that in the data, and can we be hopeful that that'll show up in other districts that were behind the Nanaimo and its VIU opportunity?
Yes, through the chair, that's an excellent observation. And actually, I hadn't made that connection, but I think that's an interesting point to raise. So I am unable to speak to specifics about the data, in more detail in that regard, but certainly, and another piece of this sort of overall offering of support for children and youth in care is going to be becoming available to some of our students soon, and it'll be across the province. I know MCFD has recently announced that they have created a youth transitions worker position as well. It'll be multiple positions in our community and across the province, which will be available to support children and youth from age 14 up, who have had, they have to have had at least 2 years total time spent in care. But the intention of those youth transitions workers is to support students in that transition into adulthood and to help navigate post-secondary entrance and all of those pieces. So it's sort of a roundabout, it's a connected piece of information to your question. I don't I don't know, any more specifics of the data, but I think that's a very interesting point to make. And I would wonder what we might see over the next couple of years with that additional support in place as well.
Just to follow up with a comment, if I may, Chair.
Yeah.
I'm really optimistic that maybe there's lessons that we've learned here that other districts will really appreciate. That if we've managed to get kids into VIU because of this opportunity, and I'd be really excited to see what that might look like when an entire, not cohort, but when a kid has gone from kindergarten to grade 12, always knowing that opportunity was there, that it didn't have to be built in, when the culture is maybe more of a legacy, that's the wrong word, but more of a given for the child the minute they enter kindergarten, that they know they can continue. I just think that's going to have an amazing impact, and I'm really glad to have you paying attention to the data, because I like that stuff. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. If I can just follow up, because I fund Indigenous students, and VIU does the TWP. Can't provide funding for books and supplies, but they can pay the tuition. The ministry of funding is both. It has living allowance, book supply, and tuition, or not books, sorry, but tuition and living allowance. And I've had so many students that I've talked to who are tuition waiver who have said that they never would have dreamed of going, ever thought they had that opportunity if it wasn't for that. And I've seen so many graduating, just had 3, I think I worked with, that graduated Bachelor of Social Work, Bachelor of Education, and I can't remember, I think 2 were social work actually, but it's pretty amazing. So
incredible.
Yeah. Leanna has a comment of wonderful presentation. Thank you, Kirsten. 3% is 459, which is so many little humans in care. I'm so glad the number is coming down, as the provincial average is 4.14. Glad all these partnerships are working together, and so thankful for the mentors. Yeah, beautifully said, Leanna. All right, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, so moving on.
Thank you. Yep, and through the chair, we're just going to turn it right back over to Kirsten Funke Robinson and Director Steele. They're going to present on the crisis response continuum.
Yeah, I'll take this piece, and then Director Funke Robinson, who is a doctor, will be back in a little bit to share the other piece of her piece this evening. So I'll just get my screen sharing here. Yeah, so I was asked to bring a little bit of information about the crisis development model this evening. It's one of the frameworks that we use as a system to support our complex kiddos who are needing some support around self-regulation and safety behaviors in the school settings. So this model is something that comes out of the nonviolent crisis intervention training that we've spoken about previously. So the Crisis Prevention Institute is the organization that has developed the nonviolent crisis intervention training. And the crisis development model is the framework that NCI training is based on. We find that this framework is really supportive. Not only does it provide a really nice structure around interventions and support and strategy that we're using for our kiddos, but it has really been unifying across the system in terms of having a common language, having a common understanding and way of approaching different circumstances and situations. It's letting us explain things in a really constructive way and be really supportive in our explanations and support with parents as well. So we've based a whole bunch of our individualized student supportive plans around this framework. So for example, we have a thing we call the NCI student data profile, which allows school staff to take really comprehensive and thoughtful observations of students and the behaviors they're experiencing in school setting. It really helps us figure out, which settings may be complex, which events might be antecedents to things that we see happen, and kind of pull apart those strategies and proactive things we can do. Personalized schedules, escalation, de-escalation continuums, integration plans, regulation support plans, employee safety plans are all based around this framework to give us a common platform to build these plans around. All of it is based on the notion that all behavior is a form of communication. So some of the kiddos who experience complex behaviors at school are also verbal people who can explain to us what's going on. They can have conversations with us about things. But many of the kids we support struggle with verbal communication. Either they're using communication devices and are not able to explain things at all, or for some kids, it's just really in the heat of the moment. It's sure hard to say what's on your mind and what's going on. And so we try to build the continuum based on an understanding of verbal and nonverbal cues to help us know what's going on. And it's an integrated experience. So one of the things that is integral to this framework is, you know, a child is not experiencing the behavior in a vacuum. The environment, the adults they're interacting with, the other children and things going on in the school are impacting their experience. And so it's really important that the adult knows that their behavior is also a form of communication, that when we are providing support to a learner who's struggling, our nonverbal communication, our body language, our posture, our proximity to the student make a difference. The tone, volume, content of what we say makes a difference. And understanding the precipitating factors, you know, the moment doesn't happen alone. Things have happened before, things will happen later. There's a history of relationship and other moment-to-moment interactions that are impacting things. So we really try to keep that front of mind with all of the planning and support as we work through these pieces. So we want to maintain focus on the goal. I'll go into more detail about this in a minute, but we want to maintain focus on the goal of acquiring tension reduction. So everybody taking that collective breath after something has happened and reestablish therapeutic rapport with the student, reconnect with relationship. It's really important we stay rationally detached. So we have to remember that the child is not, kids do the best that they can. They give us the best they have with the tools available to them. And I've never met a child who doesn't want a relationship with the adult that they're working with. We can't take it personally. We need to look objectively at our strategies and our interventions and see how things are working, and always be looking to be as supportive and positive as we can. And we need to be really proactive about mitigating precipitating factors. If there's a history of previous conflict, if the child has arrived without a good night's sleep or breakfast, if the setting is stressful, I mean, you know, buildings of 300 plus kiddos with lights and noises, and, you know, our high schools have super busy hallways, and all of that stuff is needing consideration when we're working through this continuum. I just wanted to share a visual of this before I move into the specifics of the model. So when we refer to an escalation de-escalation protocol, what that is a mirroring of what are the observable behaviors that a student experiences or demonstrates during a crisis, and what are the appropriate supportive staff responses to those moments. So we take a look at this anxiety continuum. When a child moves from anxiety into defensive behaviors into something that's a significant risk behavior, what do we notice? And I'll give you some more specific examples in a minute. But when we're building these plans, this is a tool we often use so that there's a quick reference for the adults who work with the student at school. If I see this behavior in a student, here's how I'm going to respond. So I'm really supportive and I'm not accidentally making things worse or more difficult for everybody. This is a quick peek at the data collection. None of these plans are created without really fulsome data collection. It's super important that we understand the frequency, intensity, and duration of the experiences the child is having. We need to be sure that we're getting good information for families and that they are understanding their child's experience at school, and that we are learning from their experience and wisdom in making fulsome recommendations and supports. Outside assessments, if students have a care team outside of school, we want to learn what we can from anybody who's got an understanding of what's happening. And sometimes information comes from students. I mean, rarely, but it does happen that a satisfaction survey or an erase report or something will give us a little bit of information. More typically, it's conversation with the students and a debrief of things that have happened, or conversation with a broader peer group to understand what's going on. But this is a tool we use district-wide to make sure that we're getting a really solid foundation of information to build from. The model itself has these 4 layers. So as I stated before, it is an integrated experience, that the progression of a crisis development with a student has to be matched with appropriate interventions from the adults. So I'm going to go through this in a little bit more detail to illustrate a bit about what I'm saying. But we always are trying to get to this place where tension has been reduced and we've reestablished rapport with the child. So Anxiety is typically described as a change in behavior. So when we talk about level 1 on these plans, that's not baseline. Baseline is 0 or outside of this. When we talk about level 1 behaviors, we are talking about a child who is experiencing something in their typical baseline, and it's related to some feelings of anxiety. How we support that is through a supportive, empathetic, non-judgmental approach. So, like, for example, we might notice that a student starts wandering around the classroom, or they might stop working on a task or start scribbling on the margins, and it's or get quiet. Sometimes kids who are really interactive will pull into themselves a little bit if they're starting to feel some anxiety. So these are not behaviors that are easy to see all the time, but they are subtle cues that something is shifting for this learner, and we need to really attend to those cues. And you know, this is the moment we want to step in with our first layer of support and hopefully prevent things from escalating beyond this point. This is where our work with the care teams and families is so very critical, because sometimes the cues are really, really subtle, and people who know the child best are the ones that are going to be able to help us find them. I've worked with kids where it really just is that the pencil gets put down and they don't say a word and they look engaged and they're still following the lesson, but that little bit of disconnect is a cue for us. When things start to move along the continuum a little bit, what we see is people become a little bit more defensive. This in the NCI world is described as protecting oneself from a real or perceived challenge. The perceived part is really important. There are things that can be perceived as a threat or as a pressure or are concerning to an individual that to others might not look like a big deal, but if it's impacting a person in a way that they're starting to feel defensive, we know we need some more layers of support there. So what happens at that point is really clear direction or instruction. We're going to just reaffirm what our expectations are. We're going to state things plainly without a whole big kind of description and expecting the person to settle into some debriefing and breaking it down. We're probably going to increase our use of visual supports. We might see if the student would like to access a cozy corner, or perhaps this is the moment where a teacher does a quiet private check-in with the student. Maybe we'll confirm, you know, first we're going to do this, and next is, you know, coming up is this transition, or when this is finished, you can have a break, or we'll be going to the gym, something like that, just to anchor the child in the expectation without putting additional demands on them, help them make sense of their environment in that moment in a safe way. If things are continuing along this continuum and we start to describe level 3 risk behaviors, now we're into the realm of behavior that presents an imminent or immediate risk to themselves or to others. So things start to get more disruptive at this point. This is where we may see furniture being flipped, items being thrown, sometimes things that at the defensive stage is just sort of materials being tossed off the edge of a desk. Now they may be thrown at an individual. You know, the desk isn't just tipped over, it's shoved towards peers or a teacher. This may involve eloping. So sometimes kids will leave the room when they're feeling defensive. A risk behavior is more of an elopement, not just from the classroom, but maybe out of the building, maybe down the street or into the road. So these are where we believe something significant that could be of immediate risk is going to occur. This is where we move into safety interventions. So these are non-restrictive or restrictive strategies that maximize safety and minimize harm. This is where you know, we don't restrain children unless there is immediate danger for life and limb, but it might be that we evacuate a classroom at this point. It might be that an EA or a teacher who had been moving in at the defensive stage to try to provide some clear, quiet direction now is standing back a little bit. So we are still supervising the student and making sure we've got eyes on their safety, but we're not trying to engage in conversation. We're not trying to move in and problem solve. We're giving them a safe space to work through the moment and catch their breath a little bit before we provide the next level of intervention. Sometimes this moment between level 2+, as a lot of the staff describe it, and level 3 is a place where we can do a fast finish to a task that's causing some stress and move to something more preferred, so that we can eliminate the escalation all the way into level 3 and kind of, you know, turn things around before we get to that point. But at level 3, really, that's the point where it's about keeping everybody safe. Then we want to reduce tension. We will see at this moment of tension reduction, typically there's a decrease in physical and emotional energy. Some kids will get really, really quiet and a little bit still. We see children fall asleep actually at this time. We'll see them reach for comfort items. So we try really hard when we're developing these plans to know what thing is going to feel good at the other side of this. Hopefully we have navigated this in a way that's preserved the student's dignity as much as we can, but there are times when if you've really lost it in a classroom setting, you feel some shame and embarrassment about that. And we want to protect your dignity as much as we can. So we will build into the plans ways to, have other children leave the room or help this child move to a quiet space where they can have something that's comforting to them, or a safe adult, or music, something that helps them kind of recover in the moment. And our goal at this point is to reestablish the relationship. So this isn't the moment where we're debriefing, making plans for next time, certainly not insisting on apologies or explanations. There is a time and a place for those types of restorative dialogues, for sure. This isn't that moment. This moment is about reconnecting, establishing relationship, making sure that this child is feeling safe and that they know it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. You still have protected your relationship and connection with the adults who are working with you, and we're going to be okay. Together, we're going to figure this out. So we make sure that our plans really have a lot of information about these pieces. What will happen is we work through a model, we call it the coping model, that helps us reconnect back to the plan and make sure that we've got all the strategies that we need. It's really important, because it's an integrated experience, that not only do we reestablish that therapeutic rapport and relationship between the child and the adult that went through that, but we also have to know that the adult experienced a very challenging moment. And it's really scary when you're working with a child who experiences a level 3 escalation or risk behavior. We take our responsibilities really seriously. We're caring for people's children, and it's a big deal when something like that happens. So it can be really hard on the adult to know that that moment has happened and we didn't have all of the things that could have prevented it at that moment. So first, we try to establish emotional and physical control again. We orient everybody to the basic facts. What are the, who, what, when, where, why happened? Let's just make sure we're all thinking the same thing about what happened. Then we really slow it down and we look for patterns in both the student and staff responses to make sure that we understand what transpired and what we can adjust in the plan to mitigate those experiences again. If it's a new behavior in the child, then we want to figure out why it happened and what we can do differently next time. Is there a piece in the staff response? Was there either a missing strategy that wasn't used, or is it that we learned something new that we can now add in? Is this an adult who's a little bit newer to working with this child and perhaps some capacity building and support is required? Then we investigate alternatives. We figure out what else we can offer, what are some pieces we can do to strengthen staff response. From there, we negotiate some future responses. Not negotiation in the typical sense of the word negotiate, but more what kinds of conversation and coaching can we have? Sometimes, when we're ready to come back and the student's ready to sit with us, we can say, okay, look, this thing happened. Here's 2 or 3 options we have next time that we can try. Which one feels better to you? What would you like to do? If we're looking at a break space, does it feel better for you to go to this spot or to this spot? So some pieces like that is what we mean when we say negotiate. And then just support and encouragement. Make sure everybody knows that we have confidence in both the student and in the staff, and that sure, we may have some pieces we need to reframe and work through, but we can do that. We can successfully do that together, and we're going to be okay. So I might just pause there because I know the other half of this conversation this evening is Director Funky Robinson is going to come on and talk a little bit about our erase reporting tool, but I think it's a little bit beside this model. So if folks have questions or things that I can respond to related to that, maybe we want to do that before I move on to the next piece. I might just stop sharing for a second just in case. If not, I'm happy to put the screen back on and we can continue.
Doesn't look like there's any questions, Carrie, so we can move on. Oh, Chantel.
I couldn't type fast enough, so I decided to pop on real quick. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Chair? Thank you so much, Carrie, for coming today and explaining this. This is really great news for everybody listening, but especially for parents whose children are, you know, have been through that, right? Or might go through that in the future, right? So this is really great for them to hear. And for me too. It's very fulsome presentation that you've done here. I'm wondering if you could just explain just a tiny little bit. I don't want to crack open a big egg here or anything like that, but it's the stuff that happens before. And I know that we've kind of sort of been talking about that throughout the year in these presentations. But if you kind of want to wrap that up real quick.
Sure, yeah, I can try.
Okay. Before the child gets to that step one, right? To the anxiety in the classroom and the environment, because we know that can be affect children as well, and staff and everybody. So if you want to explain a little bit of that, that'd be great.
So I mean, it's a giant question to go into a bunch of detail, but I can give you some foundational pieces for sure. I think it really is squarely centered on this tiered model of support that we have. So we know at the base of our 3-tier system is that really robust, universal, differentiated classroom setting. We know that creating physical environments, creating culture and psychological safety in classrooms, having teachers feel confident that they've got the tools and information and knowledge that they need to support the diversity of the learners in their room. We have to spend a lot of time right there, making sure classrooms feel prepared to welcome all of the learners who are part of that learning community. So that's the first piece for sure. Another piece is that we spend a lot of time personalizing those environments as well. So yes, super important to have universal opportunities. It's also super important to understand who might need a first then schedule that's like some kids, it's great if it's up on the board. Other learners need the one on their desk. That's really reassuring for them. So do we have those kinds of tools in place? Do we have visual timers? Do we have transition strips? Do we have oral cues that we use for some kiddos? There's a secret handshake or something that's, I mean, we, you know, lots of stuff like that as part of classrooms as well. And so those are the pieces that are so critical to build with families and outside care providers, and to really look at those assessment recommendations that we get. The more we do with that stuff, the less we need crisis response, right? So the continuum is important because we need to understand what's happening for our kids when they are experiencing an escalation. We need our staff to feel equipped with the tools they need to respond to it. We spend as much or more time on the proactive pieces for sure. But we're just not going to be, I mean, schools are really complex environments. Stuff is going to happen for sure. So yeah, I don't know if that quite got at your question. So it's classrooms, and it's also, it's also all the training. You know, I know that there was some conversation last week about the NCI training and some of the modules and things that are being developed for staff. I think there's the universal training, and there's also the student specific training. You know, one of the things that happens a lot with this is we get people to do the full day training for the nonviolent crisis intervention for the foundational pieces. If we have a student that we know is reacting with particular stressors in a certain environment or in a place in their school, we also do child specific training to add the next layer on. So it's classrooms, it's training, it's common language and framework.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Carrie. And I really, really appreciate the debrief as well. I think that's a component, I think, that is so critical to recreating that relationship again and that connection. I really appreciate that. And hopefully everybody is feeling positive about that as well. And I'm sure they are. And thank you very much, Carrie, for that.
If I might, can I add one more piece onto that too, Chair? Is that okay? I just, the debrief is a piece I didn't reference, and I wish I had actually, is, you know, thinking back to some of the presentation from the Georgia team this evening, caring for the kids is super important. So is caring for the adults who care for the kids. So the debrief around the integrated experience is really important. But the other thing that we have done fairly regularly actually is where there's been a situation that we know has been really particularly stressful for a couple of individual staff members or a team, our manager of mental health and addiction sometimes will follow up after the coping debrief just to do an individual wellness check for the staff and make sure that it landed the way we hoped it had landed in terms of debrief and next steps and wrapping around the school team and the family. So
that's great. Thank you. You did a little tiny bit in an earlier slide there, but thank you very much. That actually adds another component of information. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Chair, I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Thanks, sorry, thanks, Carrie. Just looking at the agenda, we still have the budget, we have SOGI, we also have unfinished business to discuss, and we've got like an hour and 20 minutes. So I think we just need to be mindful of the time.
Sure. And I think the other piece of this was the race bullying part too, which I think that's why Director Funky Robinson's popping on. We had a few slides left in the slideshow
Yeah,
as well.
that sounds good. Just a reminder to everyone. Thanks.
Would you like us to move on to the other slides then now? Is it time?
Beautiful. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, here they come.
Thank you. And I will keep this part brief. The idea here, I think, was just to be able to share with all of the trustees a little bit of an overview that I had shared previously with the Safe Schools Committee. So a couple of the trustees had had the opportunity to see that. So you'll be familiar with the Erase Bullying Report It tool that's available online to all of our students. So I'll just get you to advance to the next slide there, please, Carrie. So the Erase Report It tool is an online anonymous reporting tool that is accessible 24/7 for any students, and they can use this as a way to report anything that's bothering them, something that they're concerned about, maybe something they've experienced directly or witnessed or observed in their school or community setting, and they can report it using this platform. It's available at each of these two websites, but in addition, we have it linked centrally on our homepage for the district. You will probably have seen it there on the right-hand side. We also have it linked directly on every school website in the district. So this is the screen that pops up when students click on that link, and the pink Get Help Now button is what they click again. And it takes them into this screen that gives 3 different choices. So if there's something immediate going on, it prompts them to call 911 if it's an immediate emergency, and it walks them through that, as you can see. The second option is if they're really looking to someone to be able to speak to it immediately, it gives them a few direct options. So the Kids Help phone, crisis line, it gives a few different options that they can contact immediately to be able to reach someone. And then the third option there is the Tell Someone, and this is the Report It tool that I am referring to. So each of these screens is just going to show you from the student's view what they would see if they click on the Report It tool. So the very first thing it does is it prompts them to name the school that they go to or the school that it's about. The next is that it gives them a series of choices for the type of concern that they have, and they can select one of those or other if it doesn't fit. It asks when, who's involved, if anyone else witnessed it, and they can include a name here if they select yes. If they reported it to anyone else, and they can also include names here if they have already reported. And I would say in my experience, it's quite common if they have spoken to someone already, they will name the name of the teacher or their parent or something like that. And then they're given the option to leave their name. This is not necessary, but they can if they choose. And I would say, again, in my experience, many kids do leave their names, and some choose not to. The final thing, which is super relevant, of course, in our current circumstances in 2023, is that students can actually upload pictures as well. And so what I find here is students will include a screenshot sometimes of messaging from social media platforms, or if photos have been taken and are involved, they can also include those as an additional component to their report. And that's sort of walks you through to give you a sense of what students see. The process here is it's a very tight communication process. The report comes to me directly as the Safer Schools coordinator for our district. It also goes to we have a VP of Safer Schools. So we have Sean Shahi, who's one of the vice principals at NDSS. And currently we also have Tanya Whiting, who's the principal at Seaview. She receives the elementary reports, and Mr. Shahi receives the secondary reports, and I receive all of them. Those principal and vice principal forward them to the principal, vice principal teams at each school and request them to confirm when they've received it, and then to let us know the follow-up. And so if they don't, although they always do, we can then check back. And even if we were to neglect that, Safer Schools would check back too, to see and make sure that we've done that follow through, to check back with the student and to carry through some kind of an action to rectify the scenario. So it's quite a tight communication process. And the only last piece I would add to that is that if you're familiar also with the worrisome online behavior reports that go through Safer Schools Together and through the Erase platform, Safer Schools does do digital scans of online activity and provide us with a report at least monthly if there's any worrisome online behavior from students in our district, which we can follow up using the same process, if it coming to myself and our principals of Safer Schools as well. So hopefully that's a quick short snapshot, which gives you a bit of better understanding for that process as well. An additional layer of giving students an option for reporting.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to, I think it's, okay, Marcus withdrawn his question now. Greg Keller says, thank you very much for this informative presentations this evening. There's always something new to learn. And Tanya has a quick question.
Thank you. And I know that we're tight for time, but I just want to ask this because, because I want to be able to promote this to kids and families. So I want to make sure I understand how do we reassure kids that when they use this function, that they have like confidentiality, because I know that there's been times where I didn't want to report a bully because in the meantime, they beat me up kind of thing, you know? How do we handle that?
So it does in the prompts for students that they see specifically, it does address that, and it tells them that they don't have to leave their name. It can be anonymous. And then some of the posters and some of the promotional pieces that come from Safer Schools that we send out to schools a couple of times a year typically also indicate that it is anonymous, that they don't need to leave their name if they don't want to.
Yeah, so they can leave, they don't have to leave their own name, but they can tell you the name of the kid that, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm trying, yeah. Thank you, I'm good.
Are there any more comments or questions? I don't see any, so I'll turn this over. Thank you so much, both of you. Carrie, I just know you are a workhorse, and I personally know how much you put into your work, having done my master's with you. So I wasn't surprised by your presentation. And Kristen, we're getting to know you, and we're really appreciating your work very much. So thank you. I'll turn it back over to Assistant Superintendent Balcom.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, it's my pleasure to turn the next presentation over to Director of Instructor Nicole Davey, who's going to give an update on SOGI.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here this evening. Thank you to Kristen and Carrie. And I just also wanted to recognize the beautiful work that Georgia Elementary and Cedar Secondary are doing around community belonging and mental health. And my report today very much connects to community belonging and mental health. So I just have one slide that I would like to share, and bear with me as I do this. Are you able to see it? Yes. Do you see my notes or do you just see the slide?
We see your notes as well.
Okay, so I'm going to try and do from current slide. How's that?
No, you're still in the, we still see your notes one, so.
Okay.
Maybe just go from the beginning and see what it's top left there.
Okay, let's try this. No.
Maybe go to the view and see if you're in notes view and across the top bar.
Okay, thanks everybody.
And then go to the slide. Normal, yeah.
Normal. Well,
just minimize. Okay. You can minimize those boxes. Just slide them a little over a little bit. If you want.
Slide. Oh goodness. Okay.
down at the bottom, you can just slide your notes window pane a little smaller.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like this guy right here.
Yeah.
All right. How's that?
There you go. That's
Good.
big enough. We can see
Okay.
that. There you go.
Thanks, everybody. So I just wanted to touch on our work around creating SOGI inclusive classrooms. We are looking at doing this in a variety of different ways. So SOGI inclusive education raises awareness of and welcomes students of all sexual orientations, gender identities, and family structures. SOGI inclusive education includes conversations in the classroom about diversity at any time. So SOGI inclusive policies and procedures have been proven to reduce discrimination, suicidal ideation, and suicide attempts for all students. And it's an integral part of the learning framework and the NLPS strategic plan to ensure that our schools are safe, inclusive, and that they honor diversity. Research shows that when school districts have explicit policies and procedures that protect the rights of our LGBTQ+ students, a commitment of creating safe and welcoming environments, and ensuring there are teaching resources where LGBTQ+ students see themselves represented, it saves lives. So NLPS is proud of the work that is happening across the school district to support SOGI inclusive learning environments. As educators, we have a duty to ensure all of our students feel safe and welcomed, and this not only aligns with our moral obligations, but also the district and ministry policies that outline our professional responsibilities. And it's important to note that there is no SOGI curriculum in the BC curriculum. Rather, we support SOGI inclusive schools in a variety of ways. So in the BC curriculum, teachers always ensure that classroom instruction, assessment, and resources reflect sensitivity to diversity and incorporate positive role portrayals, relevant issues, and themes such as inclusion, respect, and acceptance. This includes diversity in family composition, gender identity, and sexual orientation. And we also have some APs, AP 351 and AP 347, which I have outlined in your information sheet if you would like to read that in more detail a little bit later on. But we also are proud of some of the specific actions and initiatives in the district. So NLPS has GSA clubs across all secondary schools and a growing number in elementary schools, which have rainbow or diversity clubs. Club sponsors are supported by the district SOGI lead in providing resources, materials, and organizing events for LGBTQ students. For example, in April, the GSA Club at Ladysmith Secondary School hosted a GSA Pride conference for all LGBTQ+ secondary students. Over 70 participants across our district were able to attend. They took part in breakout sessions, they were able to network, and they also were able to listen to a keynote from a queer activist. So students shared the importance of having the safe space to talk and be themselves, and they appreciated seeing adult role models, allies, and advocates. Our learning coordinator team has received a positive response to the Intermediate Book Club, which is a network of teachers who have access to the latest books for intermediate students that are diverse, inclusive, and touch on present day issues. And several of the books the team has introduced to elementary schools include LGBTQ+ voices that reflect the lived experience of some of our students. And they also offer students a window to explore and learn about the diversity that exists in our society. This initiative has sparked a desire for teachers to engage in diversity book audits in their schools by using their NDTA Pro-D funds. And their goal with the support of the learning coordinators is to eventually see a district-wide initiative to formalize a book or a process for a book audit in our libraries to ensure they align with the NLPS values of inclusion, diversity, and justice, and identify gaps that need to be addressed. Our learning coordinators are also supporting school leaders and teachers with the implementation of the sexual health curriculum. The best people to teach sexual health are the people students trust and have relationship with. So therefore, our goal is to build teacher capacity and confidence, addressing the learning standards in physical health education. Part of this work is communicating with our parent community and parent advisory committees, answering questions and sharing information. We see families as key partners in this work. And finally, in March, we were able to invite Justine Dion Glowa from SOGI 123 to our PVP meeting, where she presented to all of our principals and vice principals to help them build capacity around creating SOGI inclusive schools. So SOGI 123 is a learning resource, and it has been formally evaluated by the BC Educational Resource Acquisition Consortium as age appropriate and aligned with the provincial curriculum and evidence-based educational approaches. So a lot of this information you can find in our information sheet, as well as the handout that we provided to our PVPs during Justine's session. And again, it goes through what do SOGI inclusive schools look like, what is our collective responsibility as a district, giving examples of best practice, providing a SOGI checklist so that school leaders can set goals. And we also have many different resources on our NLPS Learns website. So we are proud of the work that we are doing this year, and we look forward to growing this work next year as well. So that is the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that lesson. And I'm sorry that if you feel pressured to go fast through it. This is a topic that our board has been very wanting to learn more about, because we were confronted with a lot of comments and negative comments, really, at a couple of our campaign venues. Was a little bit traumatizing, and that was one of the discussions that we had, was we need to learn more. So thank you. Trustees, do we have any questions? Leanna says, much appreciated, great presentation. Chantel says, SOGI supports our obligations to uphold human rights. I am very proud of the work happening in our district to continue this good work. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much. Mark Robinson, thank you so very much. Emphasizing the very, so yeah, great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thanks for bearing with my tech difficulties there.
That's okay. I think I could hear your panic, and I've been there, and it's all good. Okay. Thank you very much. Don, do you have anything else to comment on, or?
Just to thank Nicole for her presentation and all of our presenters today, and then we'll turn it over to you for the next items on the agenda.
Thank you. Tom also wanted to add, my family really appreciates that my child has a GSA at their elementary school. And Greg Keller says, thank you. All right, so I'll turn it over to Secretary Treasurer Mark Walsh to do the preliminary annual budget presentation.
Good evening, Chair and trustees and staff and public. Thank you so much for the opportunity to bring, I guess, what is the first opportunity to look at the preliminary budget. So the idea was we wanted to kind of bring the document as soon as we were able to give trustees the opportunity to have a brief review, ask some probably preliminary questions, and then have it come back to the budget, or sorry, the business committee next week for further questions, clarifications, etc. as we go. Also, we hope to hear from our partners next week as well, and have offered them the opportunity to sit down one-on-one if there's some more specific topics that they would like to understand before they speak to the board about their concerns, etc. So I do want to just turn to the executive summary for a moment. I won't get the document brought up yet, but just to remind trustees a couple of the highlights to focus on, or that we focused on. So a reminder of how the budget was put together, and I'll turn to that page in a moment. But a couple of things. Just again, our enrollment is slightly up. Bricks and mortar and international is relatively robustly up, but our online learning component continues to decline to pretty much to pre-COVID levels. But however, given the fact that we won't be a provincial provider, means that we've kind of got a permanent lower bar, I think, on that program. We have there's a variety of areas that EA hours are going to be boosted in this particular budget, and we'll talk about some specifics there. And that's despite the fact that we are projecting slightly lower numbers of students with designations, at least to start the year. And so to have that higher number is a positive. A reminder that while it may not be, it might have been the provincial government and BCPC to have negotiated with BCTF and with the CUPE provincial table. We are looking at some of the highest increases for our unionized staff at this time that, in my experience with public education going back 20 years now, is the highest it's been in 1 year, and certainly the highest it's been over 2 years. Of course, we're receiving funding for that, but still the district is supporting that. So that's very good news. We have not yet heard about the number that we'd be looking at for principals and vice principals and exempt, as well as the funding that would be associated with it. We also have made a similar recommendation or similar putting the budget together that we did last year, in that we're not proposing a local capital transfer in the preliminary annual budget. So what that means is, when we have the Wi-Fi project installation, as an example, when we're replacing computers, when we have other priorities, board priorities from a capital perspective, normally we have a local capital transfer built into the budget. Most districts do that. I was looking at a couple of our colleagues around the province, and they do that ahead of the game. Because we foresee a surplus coming, a small surplus in the current year's budget. We're only talking in this presentation about next year's budget. What we didn't want to do is create a local capital transfer only to end up having a surplus. So we'd have to cut resources or programming or whatever we were going to cut from this year's budget in order to put a local capital transfer. And then lo and behold, in July 1, we end up with a surplus that we're able to allocate. So because we think it's coming, we think, again, it's better off, it's more student-centered to do that transfer in September. So when we do come in September, though, and say, board, yes, it looks like we have a healthy surplus, but we will probably not be recommending significant investments in the system in September, because essentially we're doing that investment now by maintaining the service levels that we have. So if I haven't described that well, please ask me a question, because I think that's pretty important, because that's a fairly significant number. That's probably $1 million or more. And so that's significant. And so that's that commitment of stability and commitment to kind of putting resources as quick as we possibly can towards schools. You'll notice a couple of notations as well. One, we've tried to ensure that we are audit proof in a couple of areas, as well as align our resources in a way that we're going to use them. So on the Classroom Enhancement Fund, so this is a special purpose fund, not our operating fund, and the Annual Facilities Grant, also a special purpose fund. We, back in 2016, hired a facilities planner to help implement all of the capital expansion. So we get all these new classrooms from the return of the 1991 and 1999 collective agreement language. And so we built this new space, and we needed help with that. So that was funded in our overhead by the Ministry of Education. Well, we don't get capital money for that any longer. And so we had the planner continue to be embedded in that fund. What we've done is we've moved the planner to Annual Facilities Grant, because we have more money in the Annual Facilities Grant, and that's what that planner is doing. And what we've done is we've allocated those funds to support more recruitment. So in a recruitment position, it's not coming from the operating budget, it's coming from that particular shift. And so one of the areas, I think, of challenge and engagement, or employee engagement, is ensuring that we don't have failure to fills. And so the difficult to fill positions, particularly EAs, SLPs, as well as facilities jobs, certain facilities jobs, that person's going to help with that. And then finally, and I'll go over it in a little depth this evening and probably give everyone a week to digest, but we've made some relatively large well, not large, but relatively significant changes, reorganizations within the Indigenous education target. And so the board last week had a letter from the Ministry of Education in our correspondence. And what it said is, hey, board, we're giving you permission to carry forward $400,000 of surplus in your Indigenous education fund. So in order to do that, we need the minister's approval every single year. And for the last, in the memory of us, at least 5 years, our surpluses in that particular fund have been pretty significant. And then you kind of scratch your head and you say, well, that's a major goal area of ours. How the heck are we not putting our resources, today's kids? And so what we've done is, with the working together, finance and district learning services, we've seen where the surplus has stemmed from, and most of it involves unfilled positions or positions that kind of get temporarily funded on a yearly basis. And so this year we allocated the surplus to up a whole bunch of secondary cultural support in schools, as well as to do a temporary Hulkaminam teacher, add an additional one. But every year we claw back that money because it's temporary. And so this year, as an example, we have a whole bunch, I believe it's 8 or 7, I'll get that number in a moment, Indigenous education support teachers in our secondary schools that now will be continuing 1.0s, rather than have lower FTE and get a bump up every September. And the significance of that is, if you're a 0.75 teacher, you might want to post into a 1 in some other area, and we need these people in those positions, and so it incentivizes them to stay. So I'll turn to that page to go over the more specifics, but it's important, and we think that we're going to be able to basically end our surpluses in Indigenous education, with a bit of leeway. So, Karen, can I get you to turn to page 26 of the agenda? And while we're bringing that up, just going to turn to that page just as a highlight, maybe put an asterisk next to it, because it's just the reminder page of where we get our revenue and where our expenses are stemming from. So our enrollment, operating grant, international students, etc. And we've outlined that in our executive summary. So a reminder, our student enrollment, we are budgeting on a relatively conservative basis, as we did not last year and we missed. And so yes, we grew as a school district last year, but we actually grew less. We grew by 131 kids less than we budgeted. Now we in the end, it's all worked out. We're getting by. But ultimately that led to staffing in schools that might not have been required. And so in our case this year, we're trying to be a little bit more conservative. And unfortunately, our elementary numbers at this time are already showing that a conservative direction is the appropriate one, and to the point where we're going to go start taking some advertising out to remind people to enroll in our schools. So, but we do anticipate additional students will come. And then when they do, the resources will automatically come with them to support them. So more teachers, more support staff, etc. The same is going to go for our students with diverse learning needs. And then you can see the various expense changes that would have occurred because of inflation, because of increased salaries, benefits, etc. that are all there and listed. And I won't go too in depth over that. So you can turn to page 28, please, Karen. So just as a reminder, we are and scroll down just a little bit longer, or a little bit to the bottom there. We are anticipating continued growth as a district, minimal this year, and then a nice bump next year, and then a small bump the year after. So that's positive news. And as we put together a 3-year financial plan, these numbers will be incorporated into that plan. Now, if I could get you to turn to page 17. Oh, so I apologize. Page 33 of the agenda, page 17 of the budget document. So here's just the highlight of revenue changes. And so you'll see a really big important consideration for you is that every September, when kids arrive or when we have a surplus, we end up putting more dollars into certain areas. So for instance, the board invested additional clerical time at ND, the board invested in additional cleaning for associated with continued COVID measures. The board invested in other areas. And so what we do is when we remove all of that, the budget, there are actually positions that were one time, so that actually they do disappear. And so when we get to, when you see a minus or a plus, often it's related to that one-time spending in the amended budget that was passed in January to support the kids that show up. And then the revenues, you'll see we're suggesting a small increase in our international because our amended annual budget showed a relatively robust international program. So we're not projecting huge growth, but thankfully we are projecting at least status quo with a minor bit of growth. Seatbelt project, that was a one-time only situation. Adjustment to the CSF contract at ND, that's a block is now gone to be funded by the CEF rather than our operating fund as an example. We're going to get some more money from interest rates, etc. So you'll see that's where the revenue has hit. Then if you go to the next page, Karen, please, page 34. And then, so here's the expense change summary. So these are the important ones. So again, we remove all these things from that one-time expenditures of $1.8 million. And then you can see all of either the salary increases or the inflationary increases, or you will see in the case of Island Connect Ed as an example, you'll see its immediate impact of declining enrollment in a program, how that works. And the line right above it, the secondary staffing. So we're saying, look, because of enrollment increases in secondary, we're going to be bumping staffing up by a fairly significant amount. And again, the same happens in elementary. And so all that to and fro based off contracts, inflation, enrollment are all on this particular page. So the next page, please, Karen, page 19. And if I just get you to scroll down so the bottom, the second to last paragraph can be seen. So as noted, here is what we're looking at reallocating within the Indigenous education target. So you'll see the year-end surplus from year to year as low as 337 up to 457 down to 415. And so ultimately we want to end that particular practice. And so what you'll see is we're actually budgeting the amount that we're receiving, and we think that we're going to be able to make it there. We've achieved increased teacher time through reduction of positions that either that go often unfilled, or where one of the positions was a COVID target outreach, that funding just continued on, and we're removing that funding from that position. So there will be no individuals impacted by these changes. It's just a lower FTE number in one area, an additional FTE number in the other. The other thing that we've done is we've absolutely made crystal clear that all of the expenditures in the target are defensible under any audit that would happen. And so we reallocated a coordinator position away as well because of that particular issue. And so we were very confident that it's going to be a very positive for maintaining our teachers in those positions that are very difficult to fill, but more importantly, that we're not going to end the years in multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars of surplus. And so, example, we've got the CYFSWs that don't get filled. That money just stays in the pot to become surplus. And so that won't happen anymore based off of this change. So I'll get you to change to page Please. I'm not going to go over the CEF. I'm happy to answer any questions. If I could get you to change to 25, please, Karen. Oh, sorry, 41 of the agenda, 25 of the perfect. So you'll see the Learning Improvement Fund is having a relatively robust increase. So you'll see from 1920 all the way to last year, it was essentially status quo. And what that meant is the Learning Improvement Fund funds additional hours for EAs. And what it did was every single year we didn't get an inflationary bump or enough to keep up with the wage increases, we'd get less and less hours to support LIF. And so what we were doing was giving that extra time to EAs, but when the LIF couldn't fund it, we ended up having to take it from our operating budget. So Carrie Steele works very closely with Tanya to make sure that we can get as much dollars to the system as possible. But what would happen is in order to fund LIF, we'd actually have to take money out of our operating and essentially put it in the special purpose. We didn't actually do a transfer, but to give that extra dollar. Or extra hour to a number of employees. So what we're able to do with this LIF increase is it will fund all of our EAs to get additional hours. But then what that means is it's actually just an increase to our operating budget to support additional EA time in Ms. Steele's budget. And so there's going to be additional EA time as a result of this, and we're able to allocate all of the LIF to EA. So very positive situation for us in that regard. Again, I'm going to not go over the special funds in much depth. I think the information is there. If I could get you to turn to page 46, Karen. So, and if you could just scroll down to, yes, thank you. So you'll recall there's a new fund, the Feeding Futures Fund, and we've received 1.663981 for this fund. And we want to be very, very transparent. So I know a couple of districts, well, most districts are doing the same thing. What they've done is they've identified what they're already doing in the area of food. And we didn't identify all areas of expenditure. That's work we're doing as we speak. But what we've done is we've said, okay, well, look, here is places that are clearly food, like they're providing food, they're supporting feeding, like Feeding Futures, the very purpose of the fund. And we've allocated some of that fund to those existing positions. And what that's done is it's allowed us to reallocate to our operating fund to essentially prevent having to make any cuts because of all the inflationary pressures, et cetera, that we have. And so there is also, though, significant money left, 1.25194, that's going into a supplies budget while we continue the planning of how these funds are going to roll out. Currently, right now, myself, Ms. Poulin, and Ms. McGonigal are working to gather information along with Mr. Balcombe to gather information about all the various food programs that we have in order to come up with a plan on how we expand and roll out and make sure that we don't have overlap in our services. We'll be back to the board relatively soon with a report on how we think this is going to work. It's probably going to involve partners, it's probably going to involve additional staffing, it will involve the purchase of food, etc. But we just don't know what that looks like yet. So any staffing associated with the remaining 1.25 would only be seen in the amended annual budget. It would not be seen in the preliminary annual budget. But again, those positions that we're talking about, the 6 FTE, are currently existing. They are not new. The funds are being reallocated from one fund to the other to align the expenditure with the purpose of the fund. And we just want to be very transparent that that's what we're doing. Turn to the bottom of page 47, please, Karen. So just I think a really important number to understand, and of course last year, and we'll have additional numbers for you this year, but very, very low, like some of our lowest very, very low student to staff ratio, and that's something that I think we can be proud of as a school district, and we'll have updated numbers for that next year. Page 48. I'm not going to go over the summary changes in FTE significantly because I think I addressed most of the main areas, but some of them you'll see the Rock City's enrollment has fallen below our level of funding to support a vice principal. And so that's been changed. You'll see there's a position that we're moving from special purpose to operating. And then as we go down, you'll see, okay, increased enrollment leads to more teachers. You'll see the ISE staffing, decreased enrollment at Island Connect Ed, decreased enrollment leads to decreased staffing. You'll see VP as priority TTOC pilot. That does not mean that we're hiring additional VPs. It just means that we're going to be taking some of our replacement time, putting it to VPs, and we're going to be having a pilot where 4 schools are going to have VPs that do not have classroom assignments and will strictly be essentially replacing teachers that are out of their classrooms to try to let VPs focus on the VP role as well as those replacements to give them a little bit more time and not have to kind of have them split between a permanent class and their VP assignment. And we're going to see how that works. We're anticipating savings in our TTOC budget because of it. And then we'll probably come back to the board this time next year to say, here's how it's going. It's cost more than it saved us. Here's the benefits. Here's the negatives. It saved us more than it's cost, etc. And then the variety of changes, which I'm sure there'll be some questions about, but I think I've addressed them in the various areas that we've reallocated funding. Then finally, if I could get you to turn to page 50, please, Karen. And this is just areas of risk. So again, note we have not made a transfer for local capital, and we have a lot of things we want to achieve with local capital or anticipate to achieve, from contributions to Ladysmith, what we're doing to Ladysmith, to the future ND when we're there. So those are going to be some areas of capital transfer. International Student Program. Thankfully, the strike is over at PSAC and we're going to be good for September, but all it takes is a war or a strike or something like that, and we could really, or a pandemic, and we could have a big impact on our international enrollment, which funds a lot of staffing in our schools. Exempt compensation review, if you scroll down a little bit, Karen. We have not yet, again, heard what the number is going to be. So is it going to be 6.75, the same as it for QP and teachers for our exempt and principals? And if so, are we going to get funded for some of it, for all of it? So that's a risk factor. And then if we scroll down again, we think our replacement costs are likely to remain elevated. This might be the new normal for us. And so that's a big chunk of our budget goes to illness or to replacing folks that are ill. And then we've added school opening costs. So again, we're going to come to you and talk about Rutherford very soon. And so we're going to need to start thinking about what the expense, if we proceed to open or when we proceed to open, as well as what is that operating fund impact going to be on that when that happens. And so if we think the school is going to go from 200 to 250 to 300 and 350, and when it hits 300, it's going to be self-sustaining, how are we going to fund the deficit that we've created in the interim time? And so that's just a risk factor for us. And then finally, you'll scroll down just a little bit here. Important to note that the district does have a surplus, and it's important to note that some of it is associated with benefits. So we have kind of prepaid benefit expenses, but benefits year to year change. If they become more expensive, our surplus can quickly turn into a deficit. If we were in dire straits, we could access those funds, but again, a reserve is appropriate. And certainly the district policy supports having funds. So does the ministry having funds set aside, and we think that pretty reasonable numbers that we're looking at right now. So that's a fairly high level summary of what we're looking at. Happy to take questions, but a reminder that this is intended to be a preliminary in nature, to give you time to digest, get those questions, come back next week, and however long that we're going to require to get everyone's questions answered.
Are there any questions or comments? Hey, Mark, I just have one question actually myself, just when I was looking through enrollment and like how we come up with a figure of how much we're going to get, because we're paid by per student, right? So I know that like at the end of September, we do our enrollment count, right? And if we have projected correctly, then we get the amount that we've estimated. If we're under, then we don't get as much money, correct?
Yes, in fact, we repay.
Okay, so what happens though if little Johnny moves from Coquitlam and is coming to the Nanaimo Ladysmith School District and has you know, an IEP, a whole support program behind him, EA support and everything? What happens in that situation? Does that money come with us?
So, with respect to little Johnny moving from Coquitlam, did he move on September the 29th or October the 1st?
October 1st.
Well, then we're not going to get his base operating grant. I'm going to ask Ms. Sutton to come on and just walk us through the second count.
So through the chair, Mark's correct. We wouldn't, if the student is not in the seat at the September 30th data collection, then we wouldn't receive base funding nor the supplemental funding that would come along with the IEP. However, in February, when there is a subsequent data collection, we are funded for students who have come to the district since September 30th that were not counted, and we receive funding. We don't lose funding for students who leave. We get funding for students who come to us, so that we get a portion to support them for the balance of the school year. So they don't give us full funding, but if level 1 is $44,000, we would receive $22,000 for that particular student in February to help support for the balance of the year.
But we do not get half of his operating grant.
Correct.
It's just the special purpose associated with special needs that we would get half of. But, and the balance, the thinking there is that I guess the idea is we're going to lose as many little Johnnies to Coquitlam as we're going to gain from Coquitlam. And so rather than have the money flow, that's the thinking why we don't get additional dollars for those students. Now, whether it works like that, we don't know.
It's very complicated. It just doesn't seem fair in a way though, right? Because then the district they move to is scrambling to make things work. Thank you very much. I see that Mark has said we'll be back with our thoughtful questions real soon. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Lots to digest. And
could I just take a moment?
Yeah.
So Miss Sutton just popped on the screen, and I did not thank her at the beginning because the work that she has done, and what you don't see behind the scenes is Miss Sutton responding to schools, responding to learning services, responding to facilities, responding to IT, in explaining how things work, in working with them to make processes more transparent, to make them fair, to protect the interests of the district, because everyone's always wanting more and we only have a limited amount, to like just amazing work. And I can't express appreciation enough of what she does in building this budget. So just
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Tanya, I don't envy your job, but I would imagine you've got quite the brain power to be able to put this stuff together. So on behalf of the board, as I'm chairing, thank you so much for your work. Tom Rokeby says, thank you, Tanya. We're lucky to have you. And Leanne Pelegrin says, thank you, Tanya. So impressive. Yeah, I think that's it. We'll be moving on now to the next presentation. Or the next item on our agenda. I apologize. Just got to flip back. All right, so correspondence, item 9, referred from the regular board meeting. I don't see any correspondence. Item 10 is unfinished business. 10.1, student representation at education committee meetings. And I believe that Trustee Robinson is going to talk on this.
Thank you, Chair. I'm mindful of the time, so I'm going to be as brief as I can. All trustees received a bit of a backgrounder in the form of an email. I want to thank so many trustees reached out to me and made contributions and had input. So thank you to all of you. It's very valuable when your colleagues get together, and that's teamwork. So thank you all of you. For those who don't have the backgrounder, I'll just spend about a minute going over the highlights, and then we'll go from there. In a nutshell, it's about student representation, student dialogue, student engagement in the district. And historically, the Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools gives our 3 most visible stakeholder groups, CUPE, NDTA, and DPAC, opportunities to engage in meaningful and influential dialogue at the Board of Education table, the Education Committee, the Business Committee, and a host of other committees. And, Chair, you and I have discussed, and other trustees have discussed that there has been some dialogue in the past getting students to have some more enhanced participation and engagement. And it would be interesting to know what kind of dialogue we have with kids. So, I mean, you hear from different trustees, oh, they're on this committee or they're doing that, but I haven't seen it, and a number of others haven't seen it either. There's Student Voice and there's a few others. So hopefully we can get that information. So I think there might become something coming up at the end of this. In terms of student engagement, we've had a lot of trustees put forward ideas, put forward suggestions, really dig into, what they have seen in other districts and heard. Just by and by, the province of Ontario, and we're only talking at this point, what I'm talking about is student participation at the board level. I'm not talking committee level or anything else, just strictly at the trustee at the school board level. 33% plus students across Canada have representation at that level. And that could be through legislation like the province of Ontario, which is a populous province. They mandate all school boards to have student representation at the board. The province of New Brunswick also has engagement throughout it's not legislated, but they do have representation at all the school boards. None of it, territory, none of it. Another one. And in British Columbia, we also have, and across Canada, there's so many districts, Edmonton, in places in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all across the country. That's why the number is so robust at 33% just on the board. When we're looking at provincially, we're looking at districts such as Greater Vancouver School District. And I think we have senior staff members who are from there and could speak to that when we get to that point down the road in the months ahead. They have like a district student council of some sort, and the students are able to engage in a wide variety of different topics that are topical to them. Sunshine Coast and Vancouver have student trustees. So it goes on, and I'm not gonna go on and on. I'm just gonna give a brief synopsis of what's out there. Us trustees have seen the report, or the background, or more than the report. What we have nationally, provincially, and locally, I think is a question mark, and we trustees really would have there be value in us knowing just exactly where we're at. So I proposed initially the education committee as an idea only because of the three main bodies that we as trustees are all on, which is the business committee, education committee, and the board of education. The education committee probably holds the most topical issues that come up for students. Business committee is a lot more, crunching numbers, and I'm not saying that students can't deal with that, but it can be quite dry for a lot of students. Whereas the board and on the education committee and the business committee, all the stakeholders do get some. They can ask questions. DPAC can say, "Hey, I have a question." QP can. So, it was my idea to let students have a chance to ask us questions, or ask staff questions appropriately. And I do know that there are other means through student voice and that, but it just seemed logical. But going into it, a lot of trustees mentioned, well, there are situations where how is it structured and who's going to be excluded from being included. And you get down the slippery slope of who's included by being excluded and who's excluded by being included. North Vancouver District, Trustee Morvay got by radar on this, is they have a committee where disabled students and students with diversities are able to voice their concerns and issues in a safe place. But that gets communicated, I found out, to the board itself. A lot of times that when students engage, we're getting filtered to a degree, and it's not because it's intentional, it's because it's just so many voices. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think trustees sort of know, based on the background that I sent, where I'm coming from, and I'd love to hear from the rest of the board of where their ideas. I've had a lot of input. Even today, I had 2 trustees send me, lengthy emails on that. So I thank you to both of you, and we've discussed. So let's have some discussion if we can, or maybe we could have a motion of some sort if it's appropriate.
I think what we'll do is we'll discuss the, a little bit. It looks like Tom has a question.
Right.
So maybe we'll do the questions maybe to you, Mark, first, and then we can talk about a motion.
Sure, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about my basement got dark over the course of the meeting, so I'm a little bit front lit, but
it's a little Halloween.
Still me. Yeah, I know, right? I should be on some spook show. So, since Trustee Robinson has been political his whole life, unlike some of us who came to it later, this was well on his radar. It wasn't on mine, to be honest, but when I went to the BCSTA, we all went to the BCSTA conference, and lo and behold, we spent Friday morning hearing from a group of students who were part of a student voice project. So I find the fact that you brought this to us to be fairly timely, given that we're all trying to figure out what kids have gone through with the lockdown and the pandemic, and we can offer supports, but at the end of the day, we really ought to be talking to them and letting them talk to us. Sorry, I said that wrong. We should be letting them talk to us. I was really impressed with what the leadership classes over in, I forget which district, but they brought some really interesting students who were really inclusive, very diverse, and they were representing voices that we don't always hear
I think
in
it was
governance.
Chilliwack.
Okay, great. Good for Chilliwack. It was Langley, says Miss Morvay.
Oh,
She
sorry,
knows that
Langley,
neighborhood,
yeah.
so she can tell your Langley from your Chilliwack from your Mission, where us people on the island may not be able to.
No.
So I guess what I was thinking about was, is there a role perhaps for trustees in this? You know, is this part of our presence in especially our high schools? This sounds to me like an opportunity to team up with a social studies teacher and just, you know, invite kids to come in and have open house. Another trustee referred to having like a pizza day where elementary school come and ask a trustee a question. You know, I'm wondering if students even really know who we are and what we do, right? So part of building a successful model at the higher level, to me, would involve some grassroots development on our part, so that, you know, we don't just kind of open the door and expect a kid to come running in. We have to engender this. We have to develop this kind of culture. So yeah, after seeing it in Vancouver, Mark, I really appreciate how timely it is. And personally, I'm more interested in the grassroots work. But finding a way for us to be keeping pace with the other districts that have moved in this direction. Yeah, I really appreciate your time put into this.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Trustee Rokeby. I just like to touch on something that Trustee Rokeby mentioned in regards to trustee engagement. I really like what Trustee Rokeby mentioned about decentralizing the idea and speaking to the kids and partnering with a social studies teacher. Maybe that's something that we could discuss, because that's an outside the box approach, that it doesn't have to be a formal, thing by any means. That's why, I invited the discussion. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when we, get to that point of, if we get to that point where we decide to go in that direction, that's when I think we could start discussing the, how are we going to do this? There is a question from Jessica Krog-Irving from DPAC. Question to Mark: how are you hoping to pick or vet the student reps? Would it not be more useful to engage students in surveys for specific topics rather than expect a handful of students to represent all students?
That I'll answer that, I guess. That's a good question. I guess, Jessica, you're president of DPAC. You de facto represent all the parents. So I wouldn't suggest that all the kids vote for one individual and have a meeting, but because that's pretty unrealistic and unfair to have children make that decision. But I think we already have surveys. I'm thinking something other than what we got.
I represent let's be honest, you've been to a DPAC meeting once or twice, but there are a handful of representatives that come to DPAC meetings, but then, we are in theory elected. So when I represent all of the DPAC reps, I'm very aware of what hat I'm wearing. So yeah, how are you going to pick these students? I'm just curious, because
I don't think
I know how diverse the students are in my own household, let alone across grades, across the district. So
yeah,
just want
that's fair
question. The feasibility of this.
That's a fair question. That's why the original motion I asked for just discussion to talk about it, as opposed to doing some action, because it's something that we need to discuss. There are 9 trustees with 9 variety of diverse opinions. So I mean, it could come something out completely out of left field, like what Trustee Rokeby mentioned. Just get into the classrooms and listen to the kids, close our mouths, open our ears, and listen to the kids. I'm down for that.
Mark also in his report, this is where we could start looking at how are other school districts doing it in this province. How do they select across the country as well? How are students selected? Yeah, it's a great question. And, but like I said, I think right now we haven't even got to that point of how would we select students. Like, we're more just saying, this is a really good idea. Some of us are saying that, and we're really interested in that, having that level of student engagement. So yeah, I noticed that Trustee Keller also had a question. Thanks, Jessica. Do you have a follow-up or anything, or before? Nope. Okay.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Chair, am I to go now?
Yeah,
There's a
you
bit of
can go
silence
now.
there.
Sorry, sorry.
That's okay. So thank you. And I think I will just try to tie in with what's been said as well as what I was going to offer to the conversation is I do agree with Tom and Mark and perhaps others that I'd like to see more student input. And I appreciate Mark bringing this idea forward. And I just want to make sure that we're doing it in the best way possible. And I don't want us to rush into it. So I'm thinking it would be good to kind of look at what other districts are doing. It would be good at looking at that through the lens of our own district. Because I don't necessarily think it's a one size fits all approach. It might be some aspects of it decentralized, as I think what Tom was suggesting. It might be, you know, sometimes there's a student or two that's invited to participate in a meeting. It might be surveys or other outreach like Jessica had suggested. And I'm not quite sure that it's a one or the other versus sort of agreeing to an overall objective as a board that we want to hear more from our students and then using the tools that are available to us to try and engage that way. So I'm glad we're having this discussion, and I feel that perhaps then what's going to get us to that next step would be to find a place in our work plan with board support, of course, and to ask for staff to support us with some information to allow the board to be fully informed about what other districts are doing, how it's working, what the options are, if there's any costs involved, if there's, you know, equity implications, access, that kind of thing that we would need to consider in order to meet that objective. And so I think overall it's a great idea. I really appreciate hearing from the panel on the weekend. It was, you know, it was extremely sort of powerful hearing student voice in that way. And the way in which they were able to share their stories and their feedback, I don't think would be appropriate for a meeting setting. For the reason, of course, that perhaps some of their teachers might be there. So I don't know that it would be easy for a student sitting on a committee or a board to be able to talk as freely necessarily as if we found other mechanisms to have those types of conversations. Whereas, you know, there could be other types of conversations that, you know, we're doing a project and we just want student feedback and we want their participation. And then in those cases, maybe there's a different approach to get student feedback. So anyways, I think I might be rambling a little bit here, but I think, well, I hope I communicated the point that I was trying to communicate is that from my perspective, it'd be great to develop a strategy for how we engage students on a district level in different ways to be able to advise us on our work to make sure that we're meeting their needs. Thanks. You're muted, Naomi.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Tanya.
Thank you, Naomi, and thank you, Greg and Mark and Tom. There's a couple points I'd want to make. One thing that I've seen in my 9 or so years now of being a trustee is the overarching connector with all the districts that have these kinds of student trustees or student advisory committees or whatever, is that it starts generally usually through a district leadership, student leadership program or a district student council or some sort of a district way that high schools connect with each other around bringing students together around leadership. And from there, they work together to figure out what students might want to participate or best suited to it. They support the students in figuring out how to talk within their own schools to get information from their fellow students as to what, you know, what Jessica was bringing up about how to make sure that they're accurately kind of bringing forward as well as they can information from their school. So that's one thing. For me, I think what it is the one thing I really want to do this. I'm passionate about it. I've always been passionate about it. I think it's important that we do it systematically. I think it's important that we use resources we have in a way that doesn't overtax our staff who have a million things to do as it is. So I'm wondering, and I know for a fact that BCSTA could very easily assist us in getting this information and would be happy to do so. We could probably go through our Vista Vancouver Island School Trustees Committee a group to send something out to the other, I've lost the word, the other branches to get that information, or someone like Gordon Lee or Suzanne Hoffman would probably assist us. I want to make sure that whatever we do it in a way that's respectful of the other things that staff have on their plate, while understanding that this is really important to us and it is something we need to move forward on.
Thank you, Tanya. Absolutely. I agree. Chantel says very good points, Greg. And she wants to comment.
Of course, I got to get in on the action here. I'm talking about student engagement. Thank you, Chair. I just have one thing that I learned from, I went to the High Ground Conference with Leanna, and they had a youth engagement session in there as well that I got to learn a lot from. And one of the biggest things that hit me was asking students how they want to engage with us. So if that could be a component of you know, any plans moving forward, is making sure that we hear how they want to engage on a variety of levels. So yeah, that's about it. I won't take up any more time.
Thanks. That's a really good point. Okay, Mark, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'll just wrap it up because we're getting close to 9 from my end. I'm just wondering if we shouldn't start with getting some information about what we have got going in our district in terms of student engagement existing, so we're not trying to repeat the wheel. What do you think?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, so I'm wondering if I could, start off by, I guess, just throwing out a motion to, and I have actually written it down, and gosh, wouldn't you know it? So basically, the motion in a nutshell is ask staff to prepare a list of how we engage in the district and the district-wide and the board with students, so we sort of know where we're at. I so move.
Karen, did you get that?
Do you want a list of just how we engage with students, like staff or the board?
District-wide, so student voice all the way to committees, which committees have students on it, all the way to surveys and student voice. How are we engaging students from top to bottom and side? Don't have to have a report, just a list of what they are.
Can I perhaps maybe offer some wording?
Yes, please.
Actually, yeah, I had some wording. I'm just trying to find
I had written it down, and now I have 20 pages of notes from the education committee.
Yeah, make a motion to direct staff to provide a list of student engagement and / involvement at the district level.
Yeah. Oh, it's right here. Motion for staff to provide a list of student engagement involvement at the district and board level is what I had, Chair.
Sounds good.
Sorry, could you repeat that again, Mark?
Sure. I move that we make a motion for staff to provide a list of student engagement involvement at the district and board level.
Okay, thank you. I see it was seconded by Tanya.
Yeah. Do you want to motivate that, Mark?
No, I think it's a very nice motion that was offered to me to do. So it looks like, and I just lost it because I had 20 pages of education notes, so my apologies. But there we go. No,
All right.
thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So, oh, Chantel.
I just want to make a note of that motion, though, is to bring it back to the education committee, the next education committee meeting. So we need to add that language on there as well. So I guess I'm making an amendment to the motion. Sorry. Because that would
Okay,
more direct them like when exactly they need to, they'll have like a month to bring that
So we
back
have an
to us.
amendment to the motion to direct staff to provide a list of student engagement involvement at the district and board level and bring it back to the next education committee meeting. Do
I
we
will
have a
second that
seconder on
motion.
that motion?
I'll second that. Go, can I second that if I made the original motion? Then I'll second it.
I think so, okay.
So,
All right, so call, any comments on that amendment? To the amendment, or the amendments, I mean, okay. Call the, Tanya.
Just quickly through the chair to staff, do you have that information close enough at hand that you can get it together for, since we're not looking for detail, just a broad overview, can you get that in a month?
Through you, Chair, and perhaps Don wants to kick in as well. Yeah, I think that you know, if the vote is like 4-3 or something and it's contentious, perhaps we wouldn't move. But if it's going to be supported, then we know to move, because it's only the board that's going to actually direct staff. So we're not actually getting directed to do it until the end of the month. So normally I would probably caution against such a quick turnaround, but given, I believe that we'll be able to achieve that.
Thank you.
Okay. So, call the question for the amendment. Anyone opposed? Please put it in the chat if you're opposed. Okay, it looks like the motion is moved. So now we'll go back to the original motion. So motion to direct staff to provide a list of student engagement / involvement at the district and board level and to be reported at the next education committee meeting. I didn't write down the last part. All those, anybody opposed? Okay, seeing none, the motion is passed. To be presented at the next education committee. Thank you, Tanya. All right, moving on, new business. Don't see any question period. Karen, do we have any question? Oh, sorry, Trustee Keller.
I'm sorry, just a quick point of order now. We did just want to make sure we got a seconder on that motion, if we could, if I could ask.
We did,
Okay,
it was
thank you.
me.
I missed it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Question period. Karen, do we have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, and so we need a motion to adjourn. Thank you much to our staff. I very much appreciate all your hard work. That's from Chantel. So motion from Tom, seconded by Greg. The meeting is adjourned. Hi, Sepka. Have a good night.